The world exploded in fire and sand. Major Catherine Reeves felt the blast wave before she heard it, a physical punch that knocked the air from her lungs and threw her sideways into the concrete barrier. Her helmet cracked against the reinforced wall. Stars burst behind her eyes. The taste of copper flooded her mouth. 30 seconds ago, she had been kneeling in the Ramadi dust, her gloved hands steady on the pressure plate of an improvised explosive device. The IED sat there like a patient predator, waiting for the wrong wire to be cut, the wrong connection to be severed. 8 pounds of homemade explosive packed into a propane tank, rigged with a cell phone trigger, and wrapped in ball bearings that would shred anyone within a 20-meter radius. She had done this 1,000 times. Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD, the job that turned human beings into walking contradictions. Patient enough to spend 6 hours defusing a single device. Crazy enough to volunteer for the work in the first place. Apollo sat 10 meters away, his Belgian Malinois frame coiled in alert. The military working dog had his eyes locked on Kit, waiting for the hand signal that would tell him to move, to stay, to run. At 4 years old, Apollo had more combat deployments than most infantry sergeants. His nose could detect explosive residue at concentrations measured in parts per billion. His loyalty was absolute. Colonel Jack Morrison's voice crackled through her headset, calm despite the chaos erupting 200 meters to the north. Gunfire rattled in short, controlled bursts, the distinctive crack of AK-47s answered by the heavier thump of American M4 carbines. Kit, you got 90 seconds before the secondary device triggers. Intelligence says they daisy-chained 2 IEDs. You defuse that one, the second one cooks off automatically. Kit's hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. Multimeter in her left hand, testing voltage across the circuit. Wire cutters in her right, positioned but not yet committed. Sweat ran down her spine despite the 60-degree November morning. The sun hadn't cleared the roofline yet, but heat radiated from the pavement like a physical thing. I see the pressure plate, Kit said, her voice steady. It's a dual-circuit design. Cut one wire, the backup trigger engages. Cut both simultaneously. We're good. Can you do it in 90 seconds? 60 if you stop talking, sir. Jack Morrison laughed, that deep rumble that made every Marine under his command want to run through walls for him. At 52, the colonel had spent more years in combat zones than Kit had been alive. Green Beret, Marine Corps liaison, the kind of officer who led from the front and never asked his people to do anything he wouldn't do himself. 3 months ago, he had pulled Kit from a collapsed building during an insurgent attack. Concrete and rebar had pinned her left leg. She could smell her own blood, could feel the warm wetness spreading across her thigh. Apollo had barked himself hoarse trying to dig her out. Jack had appeared like something from a movie. 52 years old, moving like a man half his age. He had lifted the concrete beam with his bare hands while 2 corporals dragged Kit free. His face had been expressionless, carved from stone, but his eyes had held something fierce and protective. Never leave a Marine behind, Major, he had said afterward, in the field hospital where doctors worked to save her leg. Remember that? Kit had looked up at him, confused. I'm a lieutenant, sir. Not after today. I'm putting you in for promotion. Best damn EOD tech I've ever seen. You're going to save a lot of lives, Kit. Don't ever forget that. Now kneeling in the Ramadi dust was 60 seconds to defuse a device that would kill everyone within 20 meters. Kit understood what Jack had meant. Every wire cut, every bomb rendered safe, was another Marine who got to go home. Another family that wouldn't get the knock on the door. Another flag that wouldn't be folded into a triangle and handed to a weeping mother. Her hands moved. Left wire, right wire, simultaneous cut. The multimeter reading dropped to 0. Kit exhaled for what felt like the first time in 6 hours. Device is safe. I repeat, primary device is safe. Outstanding work, Major. Now get your ass out of there. Secondary device is still hot, and I don't trust intelligence estimates worth a damn. Kit stood, her left leg protesting. The shrapnel wound from 3 months ago had healed, but the muscles had never quite recovered their full strength. She would walk with a limp for the rest of her life. Small price for staying alive. She signaled Apollo. The dog bounded to her side, tail wagging, tongue lolling. Even in a war zone, even surrounded by the smell of explosives and death, Apollo maintained that essential dog joy. Kit scratched behind his ears. Good boy, let's get out of here. They moved toward the extraction point, a cleared intersection 200 meters south. The gunfire had stopped. Either Jack's team had neutralized the insurgents or the enemy had withdrawn. Either way, Kit would take the silence. She was 15 meters from the extraction point when the world ended. The secondary explosion lifted her off her feet and hurled her through the air like a child's toy. She hit the ground hard, her body armor absorbing some of the impact but not enough. Her ribs cracked, her left ankle twisted at an angle that made her scream. Apollo was on her in seconds, licking her face, whining. The dog was bleeding from a cut above his eye, but otherwise seemed intact. Kit tried to move and discovered that pain had different levels. What she had experienced before was discomfort. This was agony. Jack Morrison's face appeared above her, blocking out the sun. His hands moved across her body with practiced efficiency, checking for arterial bleeds, for sucking chest wounds, for the injuries that killed in minutes rather than hours. "Stay with me, Kit. Medic is 30 seconds out. You're going to be fine." "Apollo," Kit managed. Her voice sounded wrong, distant. "Dog's fine. Tough bastard, just like his handler. Kit, look at me. Focus." She focused. Jack's eyes were the color of winter storms, gray and fierce and uncompromising. He had a scar along his left jaw from some long-ago firefight. His hands, checking her injuries, were scarred too, a lifetime of violence written on his skin. "You saved 14 Marines today," Jack said quietly. "That IED was under a supply convoy route. You defused it, they got to roll through safe. 14 Marines are going home because of you. Remember that when the pain gets bad. Remember that you matter." Kit wanted to tell him that she was just doing her job, that any EOD tech would have done the same. But the words wouldn't come. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she heard was Jack's voice, steady and sure. "Never leave a Marine behind, Kit. I've got you." The memory shattered like glass. Major Catherine Reeves stood in the November rain, 38 years old, no longer in Ramadi, but in Blackwater Ridge, Montana. 8 years had passed since Iraq, 4 years since her medical discharge. The Marine Corps had given her a Purple Heart for the injuries that ended her career and a disability check that barely covered rent on a studio apartment in Billings. The rain came down in sheets, cold and relentless. It soaked through her worn jacket, through her jeans, through the cheap boots she had bought at a thrift store because her military-issue combat boots had finally given out. The water ran down her face and mixed with something that might have been tears, but she refused to acknowledge. Beside her, Ava clutched a backpack nearly as large as her 8-year-old frame. The pink unicorn patch on its side was already darkened by rain. The child's lips had gone pale, her breath coming out in small white puffs that dissipated in the storm. Apollo stood between them, his black and tan coat soaked through, but his posture alert. At 8 years old, the Belgian Malinois had retired from military service 2 years ago. The Army had let Kit keep him after her discharge, a small mercy in a world that had offered precious few mercies. The house sat at the end of a dirt road that had turned to mud. Kit had seen the listing on the county auction website 3 weeks ago. Single-room dwelling on Maple Street, Blackwater Ridge, Montana. Abandoned for tax delinquency. Starting bid $1. She had stared at that listing for 20 minutes, her finger hovering over the purchase button. $1. The price of a candy bar. The price of a cup of coffee. The price of the only roof she could afford. Her checking account held $340. The eviction notice from their Billings studio apartment sat in her truck, crumpled but not forgotten. Michael, her ex-husband, had stopped sending child support 6 months after the divorce. The VA disability check covered food and gas, nothing more. Ava needed stability. She needed a school that wouldn't change every 3 months. She needed a mother who could hold herself together long enough to make breakfast without her hands shaking. Kit had clicked the purchase button. Now standing in front of what she had bought for $1, Kit wondered if desperation had finally broken her completely. The structure looked like something from a horror movie. It sat crooked on its foundation, the roof sagging toward the east at what Kit's engineering eye estimated as a 15-degree angle. The chimney leaned like a drunk trying to find balance. The porch looked one strong wind away from total collapse. A truck rolled past on the road behind them, its headlights cutting through the rain. The vehicle slowed. Laughter erupted from inside, loud and mocking. The passenger window rolled down. A man's voice cut through the storm. "Hey, lady, you moving into that shithole? Hope you got good insurance, because that thing's gonna fall on your head." More laughter exploded as the truck accelerated away, spraying muddy water across Kit's jeans. She didn't react outwardly. 8 years of military discipline had taught her to keep her face neutral, to never show weakness to civilians who wouldn't understand. But inside, that familiar tightness seized her chest, the same feeling that came in crowded supermarkets when someone stood too close behind her in line, when doors slammed too hard, when fireworks went off on the 4th of July and her body tried to convince her she was back in Ramadi, back in the explosion, back in the moment when everything went wrong. Apollo pressed against her leg, forming a warm barrier between Kit and the world. He had been trained for this. Combat stress reaction, the instructors had called it. Post-traumatic stress disorder, the VA paperwork said. Apollo just knew when Kit's breathing changed, when her hands started to shake, when the present began sliding into the past. Ava tugged on Kit's sleeve. Her voice came out small, almost lost in the rain. "Mom, is this really our house?" Kit knelt down, meeting her daughter's eyes. Brown eyes like David's. The only piece of her ex-husband that had stayed after everything else fell apart. "It's ours, baby. We're going to make it better." "It looks scary." "I know. But Apollo will keep us safe, and I'm going to fix it. Can you be brave for me?" Ava nodded, trusting in a way that made Kit's chest ache. The child pulled her hood up and started toward the house, dragging her backpack through the mud. Apollo followed immediately, but his gait had changed. The dog stopped 3 meters from the porch steps. His hackles raised slightly. He didn't growl, but his tail went rigid, nose pointing toward the structure like a hunting dog on a scent. Kit's pulse quickened. Apollo had been with her through 4 deployments, 3 firefights, and 1 explosion that should have killed them both. The dog didn't spook easily. When Apollo went on alert, there was always a reason. She moved past him, testing the porch steps with 1 boot. The wood groaned under her weight. 1 plank nearly gave way entirely. Kit distributed her weight carefully, using the balls of her feet the way she had been trained to approach potential IEDs, and reached the door. It scraped open with a sound like fingernails on metal. The interior revealed itself in stages as her eyes adjusted to the gloom. Dust floated through the air, like snow that never fell. The floorboards looked water-damaged, smelling faintly of rot and something else. Old wood and decades of neglect. But Kit's EOD training caught details that a civilian would have missed. The walls were wrong. She ran her hand along the interior surface. Drywall, crumbling with age, but beneath it she felt metal. Steel frame construction, disguised with civilian materials. She had seen this before, in forward operating bases, in structures designed to survive mortar attacks. The electrical conduit running along the ceiling was rigid steel, not the plastic PVC that civilian construction would use. Military specification, designed to survive blast waves. Kit moved to the window. The frame had been damaged by weather, but she could see the remnants of mounting brackets. These windows had once held ballistic-rated glass. She had installed similar systems in Iraq, in buildings where commanders needed to see out but couldn't risk sniper fire. Someone with training had built this structure. Someone who knew military construction protocols. Her mind flashed back without warning, the way it always did. Dust and heat and the smell of burning diesel. Forward Operating Base Phoenix, outside Damascus, Syria, where she had spent 8 months as part of a joint task force. Colonel Jack Morrison had been there too, coordinating anti-IED operations across 3 provinces. She could see him standing in the blazing sun, pointing at a bunker blueprint, his voice cutting through the radio chatter. "If you're going to build something that matters, Kit, build it to last past the war. Build it so the next engineer who finds it knows someone gave a damn." Jack Morrison, 52 years old, 5 foot 10 inches of competence wrapped in desert camouflage. The best commanding officer Kit had ever served under. The man who had pulled her from collapsed buildings, who had written the recommendation letter that got her into the Marine Corps Advanced Engineering program, who had told her that being afraid didn't make you weak. The memory shifted, the way trauma always twisted time. Firebase Phoenix, January 2020, their final assignment together. The mission had been simple: decommission the firebase, pack out sensitive equipment, destroy what couldn't be moved. Kit had been inspecting the ammunition depot's structural integrity when the explosion tore through the fuel storage area 200 meters away. The blast wave had hit like a physical punch, throwing her against a concrete barrier that cracked 2 ribs and left her deaf for 30 seconds. By the time she could stand, the entire eastern perimeter was burning. 14 people were inside the operations center when the secondary explosion hit. 14 people, including Colonel Jack Morrison. The Marine Corps had recovered 8 bodies. 6 were never found, lost to fire and debris, and the chaos of an enemy attack that seemed to know exactly where to strike and when. Jack Morrison was listed as missing in action, presumed killed. After 6 months with no remains and no intelligence suggesting capture, the status changed to killed in action. They had given Kit a memorial pamphlet with Jack's photo and service dates. No body to bury, no closure, just paperwork. Mom. Ava's voice pulled Kit back to the present. The child stood in the center of the small room, looking up with concern that no 8-year-old should have to carry. I'm okay, baby, just remembering something. Are you having a sad memory? Kit knelt down, pulling Ava into a hug. The child knew the signs now. The vacant stare, the rapid breathing, the way Kit's hands would curl into fists without her realizing it. Ava had learned to recognize her mother's episodes the way other children learn to read weather. A little sad, but we're here now. We're safe. Apollo finally entered the house, moving with deliberate caution. He circled the room once, nose to the floor, then stopped at the far corner where 2 floorboards met at an odd angle. The dog sat, tail straight, staring at the spot with an intensity that made Kit's skin prickle. What is it, boy? Apollo didn't break focus. He just sat there, waiting the way he had been trained to wait when he found something that needed human attention. Kit walked over and knelt beside him. She ran her hand along the floorboards. The wood felt colder here than the rest of the room. Not damp from rain, but cold in a way that suggested something beneath held a different temperature. She rapped her knuckles against the surface. The sound didn't match the dull thunk of the surrounding boards. Instead, it rang faintly, hollow and metallic, like knocking on steel disguised under a thin veneer of wood. A chill ran down Kit's spine that had nothing to do with the November cold. She stood up, forcing herself to focus on immediate needs. They had no electricity yet, no running water until she could get the pipes inspected. She had brought 4 bottles of water, granola bars, and 2 sleeping bags rated for temperatures down to freezing. Ava needed to eat, needed to get out of wet clothes, needed to feel safe even in this broken place. All right, baby, let's get you dry. Then we'll have dinner. Ava nodded, already pulling off her wet jacket. Kit helped her change into dry clothes from the backpack, then laid out the sleeping bags on the driest section of floor. They ate granola bars and shared a bottle of water while the rain hammered against the roof. Ava asked questions about school, about when they could get Apollo checked by a vet if he got sick, about whether they could paint the walls pink. Kit answered each question, keeping her voice steady, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. By 8 o'clock, Ava had crawled into her sleeping bag, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. Kit lay beside her, listening to her daughter's breathing slow and deepen. Apollo had finally left his post to curl up at their feet, but his ears remained pricked, twitching at every creak of the old structure. Kit didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, counting the exposed beams, cataloging structural problems that would need addressing, trying not to think about how they had ended up here, trying not to think about the cold spot in the corner where Apollo had sat for an hour, trying not to think about the hollow sound that shouldn't exist in a house built on a concrete foundation. At 2 in the morning, Apollo's growl woke her fully. The dog had returned to the corner, but his posture had changed. No longer sitting at attention, he stood with legs splayed, head low, the rumble in his chest vibrating through the floorboards. This wasn't alert behavior. This was a warning. Kit extracted herself from the sleeping bag without waking Ava. She reached for the tactical flashlight she kept in her jacket pocket. 400 lumens, military grade, the same model she had carried through every deployment. She flicked it on and aimed the beam at the corner. The floorboards looked normal at first glance. Rough-hewn oak, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick, fitted together with tongue and groove joinery. But as Kit played the light across the seams, she noticed something that made her breath catch. One board didn't have the matching grain pattern with its neighbors. The color matched, the width matched, but wood grain flows in consistent patterns based on how a tree grows. This board's grain ran perpendicular to the others, suggesting it had been cut from a different source and placed here intentionally. Kit pressed her palm flat against the board, definitely colder than the surrounding wood. She pushed down, testing for give. The board didn't move, but she felt something beneath, a faint vibration, like the settling of metal against metal. She was reaching for the board's edge when Ava's sleepy voice cut through the darkness. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Just checking something, baby." Go back to sleep. But Ava sat up, rubbing her eyes. At 8 years old, she had inherited both her father's stubbornness and her mother's curiosity. She crawled out of the sleeping bag and patted over in her sock feet, peering at the corner with interest. Why is Apollo mad at the floor? He's not mad, he just found something. What did he find? I'm not sure yet. Ava knelt down beside Kit, small fingers tracing the edge of the suspicious board. This one looks different. Different how? It's not nailed like the others, see? Ava pointed to the neighboring boards where nail heads dotted the wood at regular intervals. This board showed no fasteners, either nails driven flush with the surface or slightly raised circles where screws had been countersunk. Kit's pulse quickened. The child was right. Every other floorboard showed fasteners. This board showed neither. Ava, you're brilliant. The child beamed, pleased to help. She pressed her palm against the board the way she had seen Kit do. It feels cold. I know, baby. I think there's something under here. Like treasure? Kit almost smiled. An 8-year-old's optimism, finding treasure where an adult saw only problems. Maybe, but it's the middle of the night. We should wait until morning when we have better light. Ava's face fell, disappointment clear even in the flashlight's glow. But she nodded, accepting the logic. Kit guided her back to the sleeping bags, tucking her in with promises that they would investigate properly after sunrise. But sleep eluded Kit for the rest of the night. She lay in the darkness, listening to Ava breathe, listening to Apollo patrol the small room with restless energy, listening to the house creak and settle around them. And beneath it all, she thought she heard something else, a faint metallic echo, too deliberate, too precise to be the random settling of old wood. It sounded like the structures she had inspected in Iraq. It sounded like the bunkers she had cleared in Syria. It sounded like something designed to hide and protect and wait. The morning brought no relief from the rain, just a gradual shift from black to gray as weak daylight filtered through the single window. Kit woke to find Ava already up, sitting cross-legged in front of the suspicious floorboard, staring at it with intense concentration. Have you been watching it this whole time? Ava shook her head. Only for a little bit. Apollo was watching it, so I wanted to see what he saw. And what did you see? The board moved. Like this. Ava demonstrated with her thumb and forefinger held a millimeter apart. When I breathed on it, it moved. Kit joined her daughter on the floor, positioning the flashlight to illuminate the seams. Ava was right again. The board sat in its space with perhaps a millimeter of clearance on each side. Not enough to notice unless you were looking for it, but enough to allow movement. This wasn't a structural element. This was a panel, a removable panel disguised to look like flooring. Kit's mind raced through possibilities. Smuggler's cache, gun storage, moonshine stash from Prohibition. Montana had a history of people hiding things from the government. But the military-grade construction materials suggested something more complex than a bootlegger's hiding spot. Okay, baby, here is what we're going to do. You and Apollo are going to stand by the door while I try to lift this board. If anything happens, if you see anything that scares you, you run outside and yell for help. Understand? Ava's eyes went wide, but she nodded. She grabbed Apollo's collar and led him to the door, positioning herself behind the dog's bulk. Kit pulled a utility knife from her jacket pocket and slid the blade into the seam between the mysterious board and its neighbor. She applied gentle pressure, working the blade deeper until it met resistance. Metal. The board was sitting on something metal. She shifted to position, trying to the other side of the board. Same result. Whatever lay beneath had a metal frame or rim that prevented the board from falling through. Kit gripped the board at both ends and pulled upward. It resisted for a moment, then lifted smoothly, the whole piece coming away in her hands. The board weighed less than it should, confirming what she had suspected. This was 3/4-inch oak veneer over a lighter substrate, probably plywood, designed to match the surrounding floor while remaining light enough to move easily. Beneath the board, a square of darkness yawned open. Kit aimed her flashlight into the gap, and her breath caught in her throat. A steel plate stared back at her, black and matte, approximately 90 centimeters square. In the upper right corner, stamped in white lettering, Malice TD 3rd Sodu 7A 1998. Kit's hands started shaking. She had seen that designation before. Military Standard 32-7 covered construction specifications for sealed underground structures. Bunkers, command posts, storage facilities designed to survive attacks and remain hidden. The A series specifically addressed entrances and access points. The date stamp of 1998 meant this had been built 26 years ago. 4 bolts secured the plate at each corner, M12 hex heads in what looked like grade 8.8 steel. Each bolt would require approximately 90 foot-pounds of torque to remove. Kit didn't have a torque wrench. She barely had basic tools. Ava, honey, I need you to stay right there. Don't come closer. What is it, Mom? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Kit returned to her duffel bag and pulled out the small tool kit she had salvaged from her deployment gear. A combination wrench set, screwdrivers, needle nose pliers. Not much, but it would have to work. She selected a 19mm box wrench and fitted it over the first bolt. The wrench barely moved when she pulled. Years of weather and neglect had seized the threads. Kit braced her feet against the wall and pulled harder, putting her back into it. The wrench slipped, barking her knuckles against the rough floor. She tried again, this time wrapping a cloth around the wrench handle for better grip. On the third attempt, something gave. The bolt turned a quarter rotation with a grinding sound that made Apollo growl from his position by the door. 45 minutes later, Kit had removed all 4 bolts. Her hands were blistered and bleeding from the rough metal. She set them aside and gripped the steel plate's edges, lifting carefully. The plate resisted, then suddenly broke free from whatever seal had held it, releasing a rush of cold air that smelled of metal, oil, and something else Kit recognized immediately. Cosmoline. Military-grade preservative grease used to protect equipment during long-term storage. The flashlight revealed a ladder descending into darkness. Steel rungs spaced 30 centimeters apart, leading down into what appeared to be a vertical shaft. Kit counted 12 rungs before the light faded into shadow. This wasn't a cache. This was an entrance to something much larger. Every instinct screamed at her to close the plate and walk away, to take Ava and Apollo and find somewhere else to live. Somewhere that didn't have military bunkers hidden beneath $1 houses. But another part of her, the part that had spent years building and inspecting underground structures, the part that Jack Morrison had trained to never ignore anomalies, demanded answers. Ava, I need you to stay up here with Apollo. I'm going down to look, just for a minute. No, Ava's voice cracked with fear. Don't go down there, Mom. It's scary. Kit's heart twisted. Her daughter had already lost so much. A father who left, a stable home, the security every child deserved. Now her mother wanted to climb into a hole beneath a ruined house, chasing ghosts and questions that probably had no good answers. But Kit couldn't walk away, not from this. Something beneath this house had been important enough to hide for nearly 3 decades. Something had been built with military precision and sealed with preservation protocols. And Apollo, trained to detect threats, trained to alert to danger, had led them straight to it. I'll be very careful, baby. I promise Apollo will protect you. If anything happens, if I'm not back in 5 minutes, you run to the road and wave down a car. Tell them your mom needs help. Can you do that? Ava nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't argue. She wrapped her arms around Apollo's neck, burying her face in his fur. Kit positioned herself at the opening, testing the first rung with her boot. It held firm. She descended slowly, one hand gripping the ladder, the other holding the flashlight. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders, lined with what looked like reinforced concrete and metal seams. Dust motes swirled upward in the flashlight beam, disturbed by her presence for what might have been the first time in years. 12 rungs down, her boots hit solid ground. Kit stepped back from the ladder and swept the flashlight around, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. She stood in a chamber approximately 4 meters by 5 meters, with a ceiling height of 2.4 meters. Just tall enough for a person to stand comfortably. The walls were steel, tightly riveted, with visible drainage channels along the top, designed for condensation management. A metal desk occupied one corner, its surface covered in dust but otherwise intact. 3 filing cabinets lined the far wall, their olive drab paint faded but recognizable as military issue. A narrow cot folded against the opposite wall, the canvas still attached to its frame. But what made Kit's breath stop was the items sitting on the desk. A military ID card, the old blue kind issued to officers before the Department of Defense switched to the Common Access Card system. Even from 3 meters away, even covered in dust, Kit recognized the format. She had carried one herself for 12 years. She crossed the chamber in 4 steps, her hand trembling as she reached for the card. The plastic felt brittle with age, but the text remained legible under her flashlight's beam. Morrison, Jack A. Date of birth, April 15, 1972. Branch, United States Marine Corps. Rank, Colonel. Status, missing in action. Last known location, Firebase Phoenix, Syria. The card slipped from Kit's fingers, clattering on the metal desk. Her knees buckled, and she caught herself on the desk's edge, gasping for air that suddenly seemed too thin. Jack Morrison, her commanding officer, her mentor, the man who died 4 years ago in an explosion half a world away. Jack Morrison had been here, in Montana, in Blackwater Ridge, in this bunker beneath a house that cost $1. Kit's mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. Jack was dead. The Marine Corps had declared him killed in action after 6 months of searching. There had been a memorial service, a flag folded into a triangle, condolences from senior officers who had never met him. Kit had stood in her dress uniform with tears streaming down her face, grieving for a man who had taught her everything that mattered. But if Jack had been here, if he had built this bunker or found it or hidden in it, then maybe the Marine Corps report was wrong. Maybe Jack hadn't died in that explosion. Maybe he had survived. Maybe he had come home and hidden in this place for reasons Kit couldn't begin to imagine. Above, Ava's voice carried down the shaft. "Mom, are you okay? You've been down there a long time." Kit wiped her eyes, forcing herself to focus. "I'm fine, baby. Just one more minute." But her attention had already shifted to the 3 filing cabinets against the wall. If Jack had been here, if he had left his ID card, then maybe he had left answers too. Kit moved to the first cabinet. It had a combination lock, military standard. She tried the obvious combinations. Jack's birthday, the Marine Corps founding date, her own birthday. Nothing worked. She was reaching for the second cabinet when Apollo's sharp bark echoed through the shaft. The sound was different from his earlier alerts. This was his warning bark, the one he used when strangers approached too close, when territory was being violated. Kit's blood went cold. Someone was outside the house. She shoved Jack's ID card into her jacket pocket and moved to the ladder, climbing as fast as the narrow shaft allowed. Her head emerged into the small room just as Apollo positioned himself between Ava and the door, his hackles raised, his teeth bared. Through the cracked window, Kit saw a figure outside, a man in a dark jacket, hands in pockets, standing motionless in the rain. He wasn't looking at the window. He was looking at the front door, his head tilted slightly, as if listening for sounds from inside. Kit killed her flashlight and froze, barely breathing. Ava had pressed herself against the far wall, eyes wide with terror, one hand still clutching Apollo's collar. The dog trembled with the effort of holding back his aggressive instinct, waiting for a command to attack or stand down. The man took a step toward the door, then another. His hand reached for the doorknob. Kit's mind raced through options. She was unarmed except for a utility knife. Ava was trapped in a single-room house with one exit. The nearest neighbor was 300 meters away, too far to hear a scream over the rain. The doorknob turned slowly, testing the lock Kit had engaged after coming inside last night. The mechanism held. For 10 heartbeats, nothing moved except the rain and Apollo's shallow breathing. Then the footsteps retreated, crunching through gravel, fading into the sound of the storm. Kit waited another minute before moving, giving whoever it was time to truly leave. She crossed to the window and peered out carefully. Nothing but empty road and distant pine trees shrouded in mist. "Is he gone?" Ava's voice was barely a whisper. "I think so." "Who was it?" "I don't know, baby." But Kit did know one thing with certainty. Someone knew about this house. Someone knew about what lay beneath it. And someone was watching to see who had been stupid enough or desperate enough to buy it for $1. She knelt beside the open shaft and carefully lowered the steel plate back into place, fitting it over the opening. The bolts would have to wait. She didn't have time to replace them properly. She positioned the wooden panel back over the steel, checking to make sure it sat flush with the surrounding floor. To a casual observer, the corner looked like any other section of weathered planking. "Ava, I need you to listen very carefully. We can't tell anyone about what's under the floor. Not your teachers, not kids at school, not neighbors. This is a secret that only you, me, and Apollo know about. Do you understand?" Ava nodded solemnly. She understood in a way that children of deployed parents always understood. Some things stayed inside the family, some things didn't get shared. Kit pulled her daughter close, holding her tight, feeling the rapid drumbeat of the child's heart against her ribs. Apollo pressed against both of them, completing their small circle of protection. Outside, the rain continued falling on Blackwater Ridge, washing away footprints, erasing evidence, keeping secrets the way this small Montana town had apparently been keeping them for nearly 3 decades. And in Kit's jacket pocket, Jack Morrison's ID card felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. A ghost reaching back from the grave, demanding answers to questions Kit hadn't known to ask. Whatever Jack had found Whatever had brought him to this bunker beneath a forgotten house had been important enough to fake a death for, important enough to hide from the military he had served for 30 years. Important enough that someone still watched this place 4 years after Jack disappeared. Kit had come to Blackwater Ridge seeking shelter and a fresh start. Instead, she had found evidence that her commanding officer might have survived the explosion that killed 14 others. She had found a military bunker hidden beneath a house sold for pocket change, and she had found proof that some secrets didn't stay buried. They just waited for the right person to dig them up. The question now was whether Kit could survive the answers. A truck engine rumbled in the distance, getting closer. Apollo moved to the window, standing guard, his presence the only thing between Kit's small family and whatever threats waited outside. Ava curled against her mother's side, exhausted by fear, seeking the comfort of physical closeness. Kit stared at the innocent-looking floorboards in the corner. Her engineer's mind was already cataloging the equipment she would need to properly explore the chamber below. A better flashlight, tools to remove the filing cabinet locks, time without Ava present so her daughter wouldn't see whatever truths lay waiting in those folders. But first, Kit needed to get through the rest of this day. She needed to enroll Ava in the school, buy groceries with money she didn't have, figure out how to survive in a town that had already decided she didn't belong. She had no way of knowing that in 72 hours, everything would change. That Apollo would lead her back to that corner and refuse to leave until she understood what Jack Morrison had really left behind. That a voice on a decades-old digital file would call her by name, reaching across time and death with a warning she couldn't ignore. That the man who had stood outside their door in the rain was already making a phone call to someone powerful. Someone who had spent years making sure Jack Morrison stayed buried. Someone who would do whatever it took to keep the truth from surfacing. Kit Reeves had bought a house for $1. She had expected problems. Rot, leaks, structural damage. She had prepared for hardship in work and the slow process of rebuilding a life from ruins. She hadn't prepared for war, but war had found her anyway, the way it always did. And this time, Ava and Apollo were in the crossfire. The combination lock on filing cabinet number 4 clicked open on the third attempt. Kit's fingers were steady despite the tremor running through her core. 4 days had passed since she found Jack Morrison's ID card in the bunker. 4 days of enrolling Ava in Blackwater Ridge Elementary, of buying groceries with the last $73 in her checking account, of pretending everything was normal while the steel plate beneath her floorboards called to her like a siren song. Now at 2 in the morning, with Ava sleeping upstairs and Apollo on guard, Kit knelt in the underground chamber and watched the cabinet door swing open. The combination had been simple once she stopped thinking like an engineer and started thinking like Jack Morrison. Not his birthday, not a military date, but the day Kit had almost died in Ramadi, the day Jack had pulled her from the rubble and told her she mattered. November 7th, 2016. Inside the cabinet, 8 USB drives sat in a neat row, each labeled with a year, 2013 through 2020. Next to them, a handwritten ledger in Jack's precise block lettering, and beneath that, a sealed manila folder. The label on the folder stopped Kit's heart. Reeves David, Operation Sandstorm, Yemen 2019. Her hands shook as she pulled the folder free. The edges were crisp, the contents organized with military efficiency. She opened it on the dusty floor, her flashlight beam catching the header of the first document. Classified. Top secret. Special Operations Command. Mission brief for SEAL Team 6 raid on Al-Qaeda safe house, Sana'a, Yemen. Objective. Capture or kill high-value target Abdul Rahman al-Nashiri. Intel source. CENTCOM, validated by General Theodore Carver's office. Kit's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing herself to focus. Date of operation, May 17th, 2019, 0300 local time. The date burned into her memory. The day David died. The day the Navy chaplain came to her door with his dress uniform and his practiced sympathy. The day 8-year-old Ava asked why Daddy wasn't coming home, and Kit had no answer that made sense. She turned the page. After action report. 6 SEALs killed in action. 2 captured, later executed. Enemy forces demonstrated prior knowledge of raid timing and approach vector. Ambush positions pre-established. Recommendation, investigate potential intelligence leak. The next page was handwritten. Jack's notes, dated 6 months after David's death. Carver gave them up. 48-hour advance notice to Saudi intelligence. Saudis sold it to Houthis for political leverage. Why? Saudi Crown Prince paid $12 million to Carver's dark money pack. 6 SEALs dead, 2 tortured, all for a fucking campaign contribution. Attached audio file, Carver_call_2019-0515. Kit's hands were shaking so badly she could barely insert the USB drive into her laptop. She had brought it down tonight, knowing she would need it, knowing that whatever Jack had left her would require more than just reading. The audio file opened. Poor quality, degraded by time or transmission, but clear enough. A man's voice, educated, authoritative. The SEAL operation is greenlit for May 17th, 0300 local. Sana'a, grid coordinates follows. Another voice, Middle Eastern accent, formal. This is most generous, General Carver. The contribution of $12 million, as discussed. Wire it to the usual account. These cowboys needed humbling anyway. Getting too independent for their own good. Static. Then laughter. Then the call ended. Kit's stomach heaved. She turned and vomited into the corner of the bunker, her body rejecting the truth it had just absorbed. Cowboys. Carver had called them cowboys. Had called David, who kissed his daughter goodnight via video chat from 7,000 miles away, who sent Kit pressed flowers from Afghan mountains, who cried the first time he held Ava in the hospital, a cowboy who needed humbling. She vomited again, nothing left but bile and rage. When she could breathe, she sat back against the cold steel wall. Tears ran down her face unchecked. Above her, she heard Apollo's claws on the floorboards. The dog knew. Even through 12 feet of earth and steel, he knew Kit was breaking. David hadn't died in the line of duty. He had been murdered, sold out, traded for money that bought political influence and campaign ads. The realization settled over her like a physical weight. For 4 years, she had told Ava that Daddy died serving his country, that he was a hero, that his sacrifice meant something. All lies. David had died because a 4-star general wanted $12 million and didn't mind selling American lives to get it. Kit's hands curled into fists. The PTSD symptoms she had learned to manage, the therapy techniques and breathing exercises and medication. All of it evaporated in a white-hot flash of pure fury. She climbed the ladder with mechanical precision, emerging into the main room where Apollo waited. The dog pressed against her immediately, whining softly. Kit walked to where Ava slept, curled in her sleeping bag with the pink unicorn backpack as a pillow. The child's face was peaceful, innocent, untouched by the knowledge that her father had been betrayed by the very system he served. Kit knelt and smoothed Ava's hair, careful not to wake her. "I'm going to make them pay, baby," she whispered. "I swear to God, I'm going to make them all pay." She returned to the bunker. The other USB drives called to her, but she needed time to process, needed to think, needed to plan. Instead, she opened Jack's handwritten ledger. The first page was a list of names, 38 names, not 34 like she had expected, each with a rank, date of death, and location. The second page was financial records, bank account numbers, routing information, wire transfers totaling $47 million over 8 years, all flowing to the same destination, a political action committee called Americans for Strong Defense. The third page made Kit's blood run cold. A organizational chart. At the top, General Theodore Carver, 4 stars, presidential candidate, vice presidential frontrunner. Below him, Colonel Harrison Blackwood, retired Army intelligence, current sheriff of Flathead County, Montana. Below Blackwood, Vincent Kane, contractor, former CIA Special Activities Division. And at the bottom, a note in Jack's handwriting. "They found me. Blackwood's man tried to kill me November 15th, going dark. If anyone finds this, finish what I started." The date was 3 weeks before Jack disappeared. Kit flipped through the rest of the ledger. Page after page of evidence. Intercepted communications, witness statements, financial forensics. Jack had built an airtight case, documented everything, prepared for the moment when someone would finally listen. And then he had vanished. The bunker suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Kit's breathing quickened, her heart rate spiking. She recognized the signs, panic attack incoming. She forced herself up the ladder, into the main room, outside into the cold November air. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast, heavy with the promise of snow. Apollo followed her out, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. Kit breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The way Dr. Cross at the VA had taught her. Count to 4. Hold. Release. Slowly, the panic receded. She looked at the house she had bought for $1. At the broken windows and sagging roof and rotting boards. At the structure that hid a bunker full of evidence that could bring down a presidential campaign. And she made a decision. Jack Morrison had died trying to expose the truth. David Reeves had died because powerful men valued money over honor. 38 soldiers total had paid the price for corruption that wore a uniform and saluted the flag. Kit wasn't going to let their deaths mean nothing. She was going to war. The Blackwater Ridge Elementary School sat at the edge of town, a squat brick building that looked like it had been built in the 1950s and maintained with duct tape and prayer. Kit dropped Ava off at 8:30, watching until her daughter disappeared through the doors with the other children. Apollo sat in the passenger seat alert. The dog went everywhere with Kit now. After the figure in the rain, after the attempted door entry, she wasn't taking chances. She drove to the address Frank Mason had given her. The Vietnam veteran lived in a trailer at the end of a gravel road, his property marked by an American flag flying from a dented pole in a garden that somehow thrived despite Montana's short growing season. Frank answered her knock with suspicion that melted when she mentioned Jack Morrison's name. "Come in, Major. Coffee?" The trailer interior was sparse but clean. Military memorabilia covered the walls. Photos of young men in jungle fatigues. A shadow box with medals. An M60 machine gun, deactivated, mounted above the small fireplace. Frank poured coffee into chip mugs. He was 72 years old, built like a fire hydrant, with gnarled hands and eyes that had seen too much. "You knew Colonel Morrison?" Kit asked. "Met him about 4 years ago. He came to town asking questions. Careful questions, the kind you ask when you're investigating something you're not supposed to investigate. We talked a few times. He was a good man, reminded me of my CO in Vietnam, the kind who actually gave a damn about his Marines." "What kind of questions?" Frank sipped his coffee. "About Sheriff Blackwood, about money, about people who had more than they should, given what their jobs paid. About operations that went wrong in all the wrong ways." "Did you help him?" "Much as I could. Told him what I'd seen over 30 years living here. Blackwood getting richer while his salary stayed the same. Kids getting scholarships they didn't earn. Property changing hands for less than market value. The usual small-town corruption, but more of it than made sense." Kit set her mug down. "Jack Morrison left me evidence. A lot of evidence. About General Carver and Sheriff Blackwood. About operations that were compromised. About soldiers who died because someone sold them out." Frank's face hardened. "My son died in Iraq, 2007. IED that killed his whole squad. I always wondered how the insurgents knew exactly where to hit them, exactly when. Now you're telling me someone sold them out? I'm telling you it's possible. And I'm telling you I need help. Blackwood knows I'm here. He's watching. And I think he knows about what Jack left behind. What do you need? Allies, people who served, people who understand what it means when the system fails us, people who won't back down when things get dangerous." Frank stood and walked to a closet. He pulled out a telephone book, the old-fashioned kind, and flipped to a marked page. "VFW Hall, Tuesday nights. Usually get about 15 veterans, some from Vietnam like me, some from Gulf War, some from Iraq and Afghanistan. All of them saw their brothers die. All of them would want to know if those deaths weren't what we were told." He wrote an address on a scrap of paper. "I'll make some calls. Get the ones I trust. You show up Tuesday night, 7 p.m., and tell us what you found. We'll decide what to do from there." Kit took the paper. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Major. If Blackwood is what you say he is, if Carver is involved, you are painting a target on your back, on your daughter's back. You ready for that?" Kit thought of David's voice on that audio recording. Cowboys who needed humbling. She thought of Jack Morrison's careful documentation. She thought of 38 names in a ledger. "I'm ready." She wasn't ready for what happened next. Kit stopped at the grocery store on the way home. She needed milk, bread, something for Ava's lunch. She left Apollo in the truck, windows cracked. Montana November cold enough that the dog would be comfortable. She was inside for 10 minutes. When she came out, she heard the yelping before she saw what was happening. A man in a dark jacket had smashed the driver's side window. Glass glittered on the pavement. He had reached in and dragged Apollo out through the broken window, and now he was beating the dog with a metal baton. Kit's grocery bags hit the ground. Milk exploded across the asphalt. She ran. The man was big, maybe 6'2", moving with the fluid efficiency of someone who had done violence professionally. He wore gloves. A ski mask covered his face, but Kit could see the scar on his left cheek where the mask didn't quite cover. An L-shaped scar, exactly like the one Ava had drawn. Kit hit him with her full body weight, tackling him around the waist. They went down hard on the pavement. The baton skittered away. The man recovered faster than she expected. He rolled, got a knee into Kit's ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. Broken ribs, she knew immediately, from the way breathing suddenly required conscious effort. He threw a punch that caught her nose. Cartilage crunched. Blood sprayed hot across her face. Kit had been trained in hand-to-hand combat, but that was 8 years ago, and this man was bigger, stronger, and clearly still in practice. He got his hands around her throat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision started to narrow. Then Apollo was there. The dog, bleeding from a cut above his eye, ribs clearly damaged from the beating, launched himself at the man with all the fury of a trained military working dog protecting his handler. Apollo's teeth caught the man's leg, bit down hard, didn't let go. The man screamed, releasing Kit's throat. He reached for a gun at his waist. Kit kicked it away, the weapon spinning under a parked car. The man pulled a knife from his boot. He brought it down hard, catching Apollo in the shoulder. The dog yelped but didn't release. Kit grabbed the fallen baton. She swung it with every ounce of strength she had left, catching the man across the temple. He went down. Apollo released, stumbling, bleeding heavily now. The man tried to get up. Kit hit him again, harder. He stayed down this time. People were screaming. Someone yelled about calling the police. Phones were out, recording. Kit didn't care. She dropped the baton and went to Apollo. The dog was breathing but shallow, whining with pain. The knife wound in his shoulder was deep, bleeding arterial red. "Hey boy, hey, it's okay, I've got you." Apollo's tail thumped once against the pavement. He tried to lick her face. Kit got her arms under the dog's bulk. 65 pounds of muscle and bone and loyalty. She staggered toward her truck, ignoring the broken window, ignoring the crowd gathering. The man in the ski mask was getting up, limping away fast despite his injuries. Kit didn't have the strength to chase him. She got Apollo into the passenger seat. The dog whimpered as she maneuvered him inside. Someone called out, "Ma'am, you need to wait for the police. My dog is dying." She climbed into the driver's seat. Glass crunched under her. She started the engine and drove, one hand on the wheel, the other pressed against Apollo's shoulder, trying to slow the bleeding. The veterinary clinic was 2 miles away. Dr. James Nakamura, the sign said, large animal and small, emergency services available. Kit pulled into the parking lot, horn blaring. An older man emerged from the building. Asian features, gray hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing scrubs splattered with what looked like mud. "Help me," Kit said. Her voice came out broken. "My dog, he's been stabbed." Dr. Nakamura took one look and moved into professional mode. "Get him inside. Exam room 2. Together, they lifted Apollo onto a steel table. The dog's breathing had become labored, his eyes glassy with shock. Dr. Nakamura's hands moved over Apollo's body with practiced efficiency. Stab wound to the shoulder, possible lung involvement. 3 broken ribs, maybe 4. He needs surgery now. Do it. This is going to cost at least $1,000, maybe more. Do you have insurance? Kit's checking account held $27. No. Dr. Nakamura looked at her, really looked. At her broken nose still bleeding, at her developing black eye, at the Marine Corps tattoo visible on her forearm where her sleeve had ridden up. You serve 12 years, EOD, medically discharged. Vietnam, he said. Medic, 3 tours. He turned back to Apollo. I'll do the surgery on credit. You pay me when you can, but ma'am, whoever did this to your dog, to you, they weren't trying to rob you. This was a message. I know. Do you know what the message was? Kit thought of Jack Morrison's ledger, of General Carver's audio recording, of Sheriff Blackwood's name in the organizational chart. Stop digging or next time it's my daughter. Dr. Nakamura nodded slowly. And are you going to stop digging? Kit looked at Apollo, bleeding on the table, still trying to wag his tail when she touched his head. No. Then you better be ready for what comes next. Now get out of my exam room so I can save your dog. Kit drove back to pick up Ava from school. Her face was a mess, her nose definitely broken, her ribs screaming with every breath. She stopped at a gas station bathroom and cleaned up as best she could, but there was no hiding the damage. Ava took one look and started crying. Mom, what happened? I'm okay, baby. There was an accident, but I'm okay. Where's Apollo? Kit knelt down, ignoring the way her ribs protested. Apollo is at the vet. He got hurt protecting mommy. Dr. Nakamura is taking care of him. He's going to be fine. Can we see him? Not tonight, but soon, I promise. That night, after Ava finally cried herself to sleep, after Kit had checked the doors and windows 3 times, after she had taken enough ibuprofen to dull the rib pain to something manageable, she returned to the bunker. She opened USB drive number 2, 2014. More financial records, more intercepted communications, more evidence of operations compromised, lives lost, money changing hands. But it was USB drive number 5, labeled 2018, that made Kit stop breathing. A video file, surveillance footage from somewhere, the timestamp showing December 21st, 2020. The video showed Jack Morrison sitting at this desk in this bunker, looking exhausted. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He had the look of a man who knew his time was running out. The door exploded. Kit watched as 3 men burst into the bunker. The lead man matched the description of the attacker from the grocery store. Big, scarred, moving like a professional. Jack fought. Even at 52, even clearly exhausted, he fought like the warrior he was. He killed the first man with a combat knife to the throat, wounded the second with a broken arm, but the lead man got behind him. 2 shots, center mass. Jack went down. The lead man walked over, stood above Jack's body. Kit could read his lips. Already buried, Colonel. General Carver sends his regards. They dragged Jack's body out. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., December 21st, 2020. Kit sat in the cold bunker, watching the video loop, watching her mentor die, watching murder happen in the place where she now sat. She had evidence now, not just financial records and audio files, but video, incontrovertible proof of first-degree murder. Her phone buzzed, a text from Frank Mason. Tuesday meeting is set. 12 veterans confirmed. VFW Hall, 7 p.m. Bring everything you've got. Kit typed back with shaking hands. I'll be there, and Frank, tell them to be ready. This goes higher than we thought. This goes all the way to the White House. She climbed out of the bunker and sat with Ava, watching her daughter sleep. Tomorrow she would go to the VFW Hall. Tomorrow she would show a room full of veterans that their brothers had been sold out by the people they trusted most. Tomorrow she would start a war. But tonight, she sat in the darkness and mourned for Jack, who died in this bunker trying to expose the truth, for David, who died in Yemen not knowing he had been betrayed, for 38 soldiers whose families still believed in the honor of their sacrifice, and for herself, the woman she had been before she bought a house for $1 and found evidence that shattered everything she thought she knew about service and duty and country. Her phone buzzed again, unknown number. The message was simple: stop or your daughter pays. Kit looked at Ava, sleeping peacefully. Then she looked at the message again. She typed back carefully, "Come for her, and I'll kill you myself." She hit send. Then she went to her duffel bag and pulled out the Glock 19 she had taken from Jack's weapons locker in the bunker. She checked the magazine. 15 rounds. She chambered 1. 16 rounds total. She set the pistol on the floor beside her sleeping bag, within easy reach. Let them come. Kit Reeves had been to a lot of things: Marine, EOD tech, wife, mother, widow. Now she was something new. She was a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The bunker beneath her feet held the evidence that could destroy careers, end political ambitions, send generals to prison. And Kit was going to make damn sure the world saw every single piece of it. Apollo was in surgery, fighting for his life because he protected her. David was dead, murdered for money and political leverage. Jack was dead, killed in this bunker for trying to expose the truth. But Kit was alive, and she was done being a victim. Tuesday night couldn't come fast enough. She closed her eyes and waited for the dawn, the Glock warm against her palm, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of an engine idling on the road outside her house. Watching, always watching. Let them watch. The war was coming, whether they were ready or not. The VFW hall smelled of old coffee and older memories. Kit stood at the front of the room, her laptop balanced on a folding table, a USB drive loaded with evidence that could destroy careers and end lives. Her broken nose had turned purple and yellow, the colors of healing bruises. Her ribs were taped beneath her shirt, each breath a reminder of Vincent Kane's fists. 12 veterans sat in metal folding chairs facing her. Their ages ranged from 48 to 75. Their service spanned Vietnam to Afghanistan. Every man in the room had seen combat. Every man knew the weight of losing brothers. Frank Mason sat in the front row, his Vietnam-era jungle boots polished to a shine despite being 50 years old. Next to him sat Tommy Sullivan, 55, homeless until Frank had taken him in 3 days ago. Tommy's hands shook slightly, the tremor of someone fighting addiction and PTSD simultaneously. James Ortega occupied the third chair. 50 years old, Navy corpsman, 3 tours in Iraq. He had saved 17 lives under fire and lost count of how many he couldn't save. His eyes held the particular haunted quality of medics who had held dying men and lied to them about going home. Sarah Vance sat beside James. 48, Army MP, served with Kit in Iraq back in 2012. They had cleared houses together in Fallujah, had covered each other through firefights that left their hearing damaged and their nerves shredded. Sarah's daughter Rachel worked for the FBI, which was why Sarah was here. Robert Vandenberg, callsign Dutch, took up 2 chairs with his bulk. 60 years old, Special Forces, multiple tours in Vietnam and the Gulf War. He had the scarred knuckles of a man who had done violence personally and the calm demeanor of someone who had made peace with it. Dr. Emily Cross sat in the back row, 42, not a combat veteran, but a VA psychiatrist who had lost her husband in Afghanistan. She understood military trauma in ways that textbooks couldn't teach. The others filled in the remaining seats. David Kim, quiet and intense. William Chen, Marcus Torres, Robert Hayes, all veterans, and all carrying the weight of service that had cost them pieces of themselves. And in the corner, standing rather than sitting, was a man Kit hadn't expected. Marcus Morrison, 48 years old, buzz cut going gray, Delta Force tattoo visible on his forearm. Jack Morrison's younger brother. He had arrived 10 minutes before the meeting, introduced himself with a firm handshake, and said only 3 words. Jack sent me. Now Kit clicked the first slide and 38 names filled the projection screen. My name is Major Catherine Reeves, Marine Corps EOD. I bought a house in Blackwater Ridge 2 weeks ago for $1. Under that house, I found a bunker. In that bunker, I found evidence that these 38 soldiers were killed because someone sold them out. Someone with access to classified operations. Someone who traded American lives for money. The room went absolutely silent. Kit advanced the slide. A photograph of General Theodore Carver filled the screen. 4 stars gleaming on his uniform. Silver hair perfectly styled. The smile of a man who had spent 40 years in service and expected to spend 4 more in the White House. General Theodore Carver, currently the frontrunner for vice presidential nomination, former CENTCOM commander. The man responsible for every death on that list. She played the audio file. Carver's voice filled the room, clinical and detached. The SEAL operation is greenlit for May 17th, 0300 local. These cowboys needed humbling anyway. The reaction was immediate. Frank Mason stood up, then sat back down, his face flushed red. James Ortega's hands curled into fists. Sarah Vance looked like she might vomit. Tommy Sullivan, the homeless veteran with the shaking hands, started to cry. Kit let the silence stretch. Let them process. Let the rage build. Then she advanced to the next slide. My ex-husband, David Reeves, was one of those cowboys. SEAL Team 6, killed in Yemen, May 17th, 2019. I thought he died serving his country. I told my daughter her father was a hero. Kit's voice didn't break. She had cried enough. Now was the time for ice. He was murdered. Sold out, traded for a $12 million campaign contribution. Marcus Morrison spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of someone who had done terrible things in dark places. My brother Jack investigated this for 6 months. He traced the money. He documented the communications. He built a case that should have brought Carver down. Then he was killed, right here in Blackwater Ridge, by a man named Vincent Kane working for Sheriff Harrison Blackwood, taking orders from General Carver. Kit pulled up the surveillance video. The room watched in horrified silence as Jack Morrison fought 3 men. Watched him kill one, wound another. Watched Vincent Kane shoot him twice in the chest. Watched Kane stand over Jack's body and say, General Carver sends his regards. When the video ended, Dutch stood up, 6'4", 240 pounds of controlled violence. How do we kill them? Kit had expected this, wanted it even, but she had to redirect. We don't. We expose them. We build a case so airtight that even Carver's connections can't bury it. We go to the FBI, to the Department of Defense Inspector General, to the media. We make it public, we make it loud, and we make sure every family of every soldier on that list knows the truth. Sarah Vance raised her hand. My daughter Rachel is FBI. Counterintelligence Division. She's been trying to investigate Carver for over a year. The Bureau keeps shutting her down. He has protection. Then we go around the Bureau, directly to the press, directly to Congress. Tommy Sullivan's shaking voice cut through the planning. I saw him. Every head turned. Tommy stood, trembling. Sheriff Blackwood, 2018. I was camping up in Glacier Park, trying to get away from, the voices, the nightmares. I saw Blackwood meet with a man, foreign guy, Russian accent. They were by the lake at sunset. Blackwood gave him a briefcase. I thought I was hallucinating. The VA doc said I was having paranoid delusions, put me on more meds. Tommy's voice cracked. I took $10,000 from Blackwood to keep quiet. He found me a week later, gave me cash, said it was for my service, that I deserved it. I spent it on booze, on pills. I'm the reason Jack couldn't get more evidence. I'm a coward. The room erupted. Frank was on his feet, arms around Tommy. James Ortega was cursing in Spanish. Dutch had murder in his eyes. Kit walked over to Tommy and knelt in front of him. You were scared and sick. Blackwood weaponized your trauma. That's on him, not you. But you're here now. You're sober. You're fighting. That's what matters. Tommy grabbed her hands. Let me help, please. Let me make this right. James Ortega stood, voice shaking. I was the medic on David Reeves' convoy in Yemen. We were ambushed like they knew our exact route. I always suspected. Now I know. Marcus Morrison's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. We have a problem. Rachel Vance just texted her mother. She found the mole in the FBI. Agent Richard Cole, her supervisor. He's been feeding Carver intel for 6 years, and he knows about this meeting. Sarah Vance stood. Rachel's meeting me tonight, midnight, Glacier Park Overlook. She said she has proof. Kit's instincts screamed warning. That's a trap. Rachel is my daughter. If she says she has proof, she has proof. Marcus shook his head. Cole knows she found him. He's either going to kill her or use her as bait. Then I'm going armed. Kit made a decision. We both go, but we go tactical, overwatch positions, backup. If it's a trap, we spring it our way. The meeting dissolved into planning. Dutch knew the Overlook, had hunted that area for 30 years. He sketched the terrain on a whiteboard. Elevation points, sight lines, approach vectors. Marcus pulled weapons from a duffel bag Kit hadn't noticed. 2 M4 carbines, a bolt-action rifle with a scope, Glock pistols. Where did you get those? Kit asked. Jack's cache. He had 3. This bunker. 1 in Idaho, 1 in Wyoming. I've been stockpiling since he died. By 11 p.m., they had a plan. Sarah would go to the Overlook as requested. Marcus and Kit would take overwatch positions 300 meters out with the scoped rifle. Dutch and James would provide backup on the access road. Tommy wanted to come. They told him no. He was too unstable, too likely to compromise the operation. But Tommy grabbed Kit's arm as she was leaving. I know I can't fight, but I can watch your daughter. Someone should be at your house, in case they try something while you're gone. Kit hesitated, then nodded. Dr. Cross will be there too, medical backup. And Tommy, if anyone comes for Ava, you shoot first and ask questions never. Understood? Tommy's hands stopped shaking. For the first time since Kit had met him, he looked like a soldier. Understood, Major. Glacier Park at midnight in November was cold enough to kill. Kit wore white camouflage over her jacket, face painted with grease stick, lying prone on a ridge 300 meters from the Overlook. Marcus lay beside her, eye pressed to the rifle scope. Below, Sarah Vance stood alone, her breath visible in the freezing air, checking her watch every 30 seconds. 12:15, no Rachel. 12:20, still nothing. 12:25, a figure appeared from the tree line. Marcus adjusted the scope. Female, right height for Rachel. She's limping. Through her binoculars, Kit saw Rachel Vance stumble toward her mother. The FBI agent was holding her side, clearly injured. Sarah ran to her daughter. They embraced. Then the shot rang out. Rachel dropped, chest wound, arterial spray visible even in the moonlight. Sarah screamed. Kit was already moving, scrambling down the ridge, abandoning stealth for speed. A second figure emerged from the trees, male, 50-something, wearing an FBI windbreaker. Marcus fired. The rifle shot echoed across the valley. The man dove for cover. Kit reached the Overlook as Sarah cradled Rachel's body. The FBI agent was still alive, but fading fast. Mom, Rachel whispered. Cole, he's the mole, 6 years. Carver paid him $2 million. I have proof, phone, cloud backup. Blood bubbled from her lips. Finish it, my dad, Iraq, 2007. Carver leaked that too. Rachel's eyes went blank. Sarah screamed again, this time pure rage. The man in the FBI windbreaker stood up from cover, gun raised. Kit shot him twice, center mass. He went down. Marcus arrived 30 seconds late, a rifle at the ready. He cleared the fallen man, checking for weapons, checking vitals. He's alive, gut shot. He's got maybe an hour. The man coughed blood. Doesn't matter, Carver knows. He knows about the bunker, about the evidence. Kane's on his way to your house right now. Kit's blood turned to ice. Ava, she ran. The truck ride back to Blackwater Ridge took 17 minutes. Kit drove like she was in Fallujah, running checkpoints, running lights, the speedometer pushing 90 on roads rated for 50. Marcus rode shotgun, phone pressed to his ear, trying to reach Tommy Sullivan. No answer. Kit's phone buzzed. Dr. Emily Cross. Kit, we have a situation. A man tried to break in through the back window. Tommy shot him. The man is down but alive. Ava is safe but terrified. Where are you? 7 minutes out. Keep everyone inside. Lock the doors. If anyone else approaches, shoot them. Kit disconnected and pushed the truck harder. 6 minutes. Her mind raced through scenarios. If Kane was wounded, he might retreat. If he was dead, the threat was over. If he was alive and operational, he would call for backup. 5 minutes. She thought of Ava, 8 years old, woken by gunfire. Thought of Tommy Sullivan, homeless veteran with shaking hands, standing between a child and a killer. 4 minutes. Marcus finished his call. Dutch and James secured Cole. He's talking. Gave up everything. Bank accounts, communications, a whole network. This goes deeper than Carver and Blackwood. There's at least 5 other officers involved. 3 minutes. Kit saw lights ahead. Her house. The porch light on. Shadows moving inside. 2 minutes. She killed the headlights and pulled onto the dirt road slowly. Marcus chambered a round in his rifle. 1 minute. Kit parked 50 meters out. They approached on foot, using the trees for cover. The back window was shattered. Blood on the ground outside. A blood trail leading away into the woods. Tommy Sullivan sat on the porch steps. Ava wrapped in a blanket beside him. Dr. Cross standing guard with a shotgun Kit hadn't known she owned. Tommy held a pistol, his hands steady, his eyes clear. He came through the window. I gave him one warning. He didn't stop. I shot him in the leg. He ran. I would have followed, but the little one needed me more. Kit pulled Ava into her arms. The child was crying but unhurt. You're okay, baby. You're safe. Tommy protected you. Ava looked at Tommy with wide eyes. He was like a superhero, Mom. He wasn't even scared. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. I was scared, but I remembered what you said, Major, about being brave when you're scared. That's the only kind of brave that matters. Kit set Ava down and walked to Tommy. She snapped to attention and saluted. Tommy, stunned, returned the salute. Sergeant Sullivan, you defended your position and protected a civilian under fire. You're a soldier. Don't ever forget that. Tommy broke down, sobbing. Frank Mason appeared from the shadows and gathered him up. This 72-year-old Vietnam vet holding a 55-year-old Gulf War vet like a child. Marcus was on his phone again. That was Dutch. They followed Kane's blood trail, found him a mile into the woods. He's alive, unconscious from blood loss. They're bringing him back. Dr. Cross stepped forward. I'm a psychiatrist, not a surgeon, but I was a combat medic before medical school. I can keep him alive until we decide what to do with him. Kit looked at the broken window, at the blood on the porch, at Ava trembling in Dr. Cross's arms. She made a decision. We don't call the police. Blackwood will make this disappear. We don't call the FBI. Cole's network might extend beyond him. We handle this ourselves. Marcus, you and Dutch interrogate Kane. I want everything. Every operation he compromised. Every person involved. Every dollar that changed hands. She turned to Sarah Vance, who had just arrived, her clothes still covered in her daughter's blood. Sarah, I'm sorry about Rachel, about all of it. Sarah's face was stone. Rachel's last words were finish it. So we finish it. What do you need? Your FBI credentials. I'm going to use them to access the field office in Helena. Get hard copies of everything Rachel uploaded. Make sure it can't be erased. Marcus nodded. What about Carver? He knows we have evidence. He's going to run. Let him run. We're not chasing him. We're going public. Friday night. Town hall meeting. 3 days from now. We leak everything simultaneously to the Washington Post, New York Times, and every major network. We live stream it. We make it so big they can't bury it. Dutch arrived half carrying Vincent Kane. The contractor was pale from blood loss, his leg wrapped in a makeshift tourniquet. Dr. Cross went to work immediately, setting up a triage station in Kit's kitchen. Kane's eyes focused on Kit. Even injured, even captured, he had the calm of a professional. "You're making a mistake, Major. Carver has resources you can't imagine. He'll burn this whole town to the ground before he lets you expose him." Kit knelt beside the table where Kane lay. "Then he better bring fire, because I'm not stopping. You killed Jack Morrison. You tried to kill my daughter. You're going to tell me everything, or I'm going to let Tommy Sullivan practice his field medicine on you." And Tommy's hands shake. Kane actually smiled. "You won't torture me. You're a Marine. You have honor. I'm a mother, and you threatened my child. Try me." The smile faded. Marcus pulled up a chair. "Let's start simple. Who else is on Carver's payroll?" Kane stayed silent. Kit nodded to Tommy, who stepped forward with a pair of pliers. "Wait," Kane said. Okay, Blackwood, Cole at FBI, Senator Richardson from Virginia, General Matthews at the Pentagon, Representative Sutton from Texas, maybe 20 others, politicians, officers, contractors, all getting paid to look the other way or feed intel." Marcus was recording everything on his phone. "How much total?" "Carver's moved maybe 200 million over 15 years. Not all of it from selling secrets, some from defense contracts, some from foreign governments wanting influence. It's not just about operations. It's about policy, about who gets weapons deals, about which wars we fight and which ones we ignore." Kit felt sick. 200 million, how many died? "I stopped counting at 100. Sarah Vance moved before anyone could stop her. She grabbed Kane by his injured leg and twisted. He screamed, 'My daughter was 101. My husband was 43. How many more?' Marcus pulled Sarah back. 'Easy. We need him alive.' Kane was gasping. "Carver's announcing his VP candidacy in 1 week. Once he's on the ticket, he's untouchable. Secret Service protection, national stage. You have maybe 72 hours before this becomes impossible." Kit stood. "Then we move up the timeline. Town hall meeting happens tomorrow night, Thursday. We don't give them time to prepare." She pulled out her phone and called Frank Mason. "Frank, I need you to organize an emergency town hall. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m., VFW Hall. Get every veteran in the county. Get the press. Get anyone who will listen. Tell them we're exposing government corruption. Tell them it's the biggest story in Montana history." Frank's voice was steady. "Done. I'll have 200 people there minimum." Kit disconnected and looked at the assembled veterans in her house. At Marcus Morrison, who had waited 4 years to avenge his brother. At Sarah Vance, covered in her daughter's blood. At Tommy Sullivan, who had found his courage again. At Dutch, at James, at Dr. Cross. At Ava, 8 years old, watching her mother organize a war. "We're going to do this right. By tomorrow night, the world is going to know what Carver did, what Blackwood did. Every family is going to know their soldier didn't die because of bad luck. They died because they were sold out." She picked up Jack Morrison's dog tags, which she had brought up from the bunker. Jack Morrison spent 6 months building this case. He died in that bunker trying to finish it. We're going to honor that. We're going to make sure his death meant something. Marcus took the dog tags, pressed them to his forehead. Jack always said the truth is worth dying for. Time to prove he was right. The rest of the night passed in preparation. Marcus and Dutch moved Kane to the bunker, securing him with zip ties and posting a guard. Dr. Cross treated his wounds well enough to keep him alive. Sarah accessed Rachel's cloud backup and downloaded 200 gigabytes of evidence. Financial records, intercepts, emails, a complete map of Carver's corruption network. Kit prepared the presentation. Slides, audio files, video. She organized it like an EOD tech organizing a bomb disposal. Methodical, precise, no room for error. Tommy Sullivan stayed with Ava, reading her stories, making her laugh despite the fear. The child had attached to him, saw him as the protector he had been that night. At 4 a.m., Kit's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. General Theodore Carver's voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "Major Reeves, I understand you have some materials that belong to me. They belong to the families of the soldiers you killed. Let's speak plainly. You're a decorated veteran with PTSD, a struggling single mother. If you go public with these allegations, I will destroy you. Your military record will be questioned. Your daughter will be taken by CPS. You will be institutionalized. Threats don't work on people with nothing to lose, General. Then let me offer you something. $5 million, a house, security for your daughter's future. All you have to do is burn the evidence and forget Jack Morrison's conspiracy theories. Kit laughed. Actual laughter. You think I can be bought? You killed my husband. You killed my mentor. You tried to kill my daughter. The answer is no. Carver's voice went cold. Then you've signed your death warrant. And your daughter's. I have resources you cannot comprehend. By tomorrow night, you'll wish you'd taken the money. The line went dead. Kit looked at Marcus. He's going to come at us with everything. Good, let him come. We're ready. But they weren't ready for what happened next. At 5 a.m., Sheriff Harrison Blackwood arrived with 6 deputies. They surrounded the house, lights flashing, weapons drawn. Blackwood's voice came through a megaphone. Major Reeves, you are under arrest for the kidnapping and assault of Vincent Kane. Come out with your hands up. Kit looked at the bunker entrance, at Kane secured below, at the evidence that could bring down a presidential candidate. She looked at Ava, terrified. She looked at Marcus, who was already loading weapons. We don't have time for this. The town hall is in 13 hours. If they arrest me, it's over. Dutch appeared from the back room, holding something Kit hadn't expected. A phone, with a live connection to CNN. Already streaming, 15,000 viewers. They can see Blackwood. They can see the deputies. They can see a decorated veteran being arrested for exposing corruption. Let him try to bury this. Kit smiled. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch, hands raised. Blackwood looked confused by her compliance. Sheriff, I'm glad you're here. I have evidence that you've been accepting bribes from General Theodore Carver, that you facilitated the murder of Colonel Jack Morrison, that you're complicit in the deaths of over 100 American soldiers. And I have proof, video proof, audio proof, financial records. She pointed at Dutch's phone, held high, recording everything. 17,000 people are watching right now. If you arrest me, they're going to wonder why. If you shoot me, they're going to have to call it murder. And if you try to stop tomorrow night's town hall meeting, they're going to know you're guilty. Blackwood's face went purple with rage. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff lasted 30 seconds. Then Blackwood's radio crackled. A voice Kit didn't recognize. Sheriff, we have orders from the governor. Stand down. FBI is en route to take over the investigation. Blackwood looked like he wanted to shoot someone, but he lowered his weapon. This isn't over, Major. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. The deputies retreated. Blackwood sat in his cruiser for 5 minutes, staring at the house, before finally driving away. Kit went back inside, her legs shaking with adrenaline. Ava ran to her. Mom, you were so brave. I was terrified, baby. But sometimes you have to be brave when you're scared. Marcus disconnected the CNN stream. 32,000 viewers at peak. The video was already trending on social media. Sarah showed Kit her phone. Twitter was exploding. Hashtags, outrage, demands for investigation. The war had begun, and Kit Reeves was done hiding. Tomorrow night, the truth would burn away every lie. Tomorrow night, Carver's empire would fall. Tomorrow night, 100 families would finally know their soldiers hadn't died in vain. Kit looked at the sunrise breaking over the Montana mountains, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt something like hope. Thursday morning broke cold and clear over Blackwater usage. Kit stood in front of the mirror, buttoning her Marine Corps dress blues for the first time in 4 years. The uniform still fit, though the fabric pulled tight across shoulders that carried more tension than muscle memory. Her medals caught the light, Purple Heart for the injuries that ended her career, Bronze Star for valor in Ramadi, Combat Action Ribbon for the firefights that still haunted her dreams, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. The colors and ribbons told a story of service and sacrifice, but they didn't tell the whole story. Ava sat on the bed, watching her mother transform from struggling single parent into United States Marine. The child wore a navy blue dress that Rachel Cooper had bought for her 3 days ago, before the world had exploded into violence and revelation. You look like the pictures of Daddy, Ava said quietly. Kit turned. Yeah, he always stood up straight like that, like nothing could knock him down. Kit knelt, careful of her healing ribs. Baby, I need you to understand something. Tonight is going to be scary. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of cameras, men with guns. I need you to stay with Dr. Cross and Tommy the whole time. Don't leave their side. Can you do that for me? Are the bad men going to try to hurt us? Kit couldn't lie. Maybe, but we have good men protecting us. Uncle Marcus, Uncle Dutch, Mason. They're all soldiers like Daddy was. They won't let anything happen to you. Ava nodded. trust and terror mixing in her 8-year-old eyes. Mom, why are we doing this? Why can't we just leave? Go somewhere else? Kit sat on the bed, pulled her daughter close. Because if we run, the bad men win. And all the soldiers they hurt, all the families who lost people, they'll never know the truth. Your daddy died because someone betrayed him. Colonel Morrison died trying to tell the truth. If we don't finish this, their deaths don't mean anything. Will it be over after tonight? I hope so, baby. I really hope so. But Kit knew better. Tonight was just the beginning. The VFW hall at 5:30 p.m. looked like a military operation. Marcus Morrison had turned the building into a fortress. 2 entry points, both controlled. Metal detectors borrowed from the high school. Veterans posted at every window, every door. Dutch and 4 other ex-Special Forces operators provided overwatch from the roof. They carried hunting rifles, legitimate in Montana, but Kit knew those men could put a round through a playing card at 300 meters. Inside, the hall was packed. 273 people by Frank Mason's count. Every seat filled, standing room only. Cameras from 3 local news stations. A reporter from the Great Falls Tribune. Someone from the Associated Press. And in the back, trying to look inconspicuous, 2 FBI agents that Sarah Vance had identified as clean. Not part of Cole's network. Agents who wanted to see Carver burn as much as anyone. Kit's laptop sat on the podium, connected to a projector and a live stream setup that Marcus had configured. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, simultaneous broadcast. At 5:45, Sheriff Harrison Blackwood arrived with 8 deputies. They didn't try to enter him. They just stood outside, a visible presence. A reminder that local law enforcement answered to Blackwood, and Blackwood answered to Carver. Marcus appeared at Kit's elbow. We're at 53,000 viewers already, before you've even started. Kit nodded. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. 4 years of PTSD management, of therapy and medication and breathing exercises had prepared her for high-stress situations. She just never expected the situation to be this. At 6 p.m. exactly, Frank Mason stepped to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. What you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about service and sacrifice. Major Catherine Reeves, United States Marine Corps. Kit took the podium. The room went silent. She looked out at the crowd, saw veterans in dress uniforms, saw Gold Star families wearing photos of their dead, saw journalists with notebooks ready, saw the camera lights, read and recording, saw Ava in the back, holding Dr. Cross's hand. Kit began. My name is Major Catherine Reeves. I served 12 years in the Marine Corps as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. I was medically discharged after being wounded in Syria. I am a Purple Heart recipient, a Bronze Star recipient, and I am the widow of Navy SEAL David Reeves, who was killed in Yemen on May 17, 2019. She clicked the first slide. 38 names appeared. These are the soldiers who died with my husband, not in the same operation, but because of the same betrayal. These men and women were killed because someone with access to classified information sold them out, traded their lives for money, for political power, for influence. The second slide, General Theodore Carver's official portrait. General Theodore Carver, 4-star general, current frontrunner for the vice presidential nomination, the man responsible for every death on that screen. The murmur started immediately. Kit raised her voice. I have proof, audio recordings, video evidence, financial records showing $200 million in bribes and payoffs, communications showing advance warning given to enemy forces. I have everything. She played the first audio file. Carver's voice filled the room. The SEAL operation is greenlit for May 17th, 0300 local. These cowboys needed humbling anyway. A woman in the third row stood up, screaming, "That's my son! That's my David's operation!" Kit's throat tightened. She hadn't known David's mother was here. Mrs. Reeves, Kit said quietly, your son was my husband, the father of my daughter. He was murdered, sold out, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The older woman sat down, sobbing. Other family members held her. Kit played the second audio file, Carver discussing a $12 million payment from Saudi Arabia. Then the third, about an operation in Afghanistan. Then the fourth. After the fifth recording, people were crying openly. After the seventh, they were angry. After the 10th, they wanted blood. Then Kit played the video, the bunker surveillance footage. Jack Morrison fighting for his life. Vincent Kane shooting him twice, standing over his body. General Carver sends his regards. The room erupted. People were on their feet, shouting. The journalists were on their phones. The FBI agents were recording everything. Kit let it go for 30 seconds. Then she raised her hand. There's more. Sheriff Harrison Blackwood, standing outside this building right now, facilitated Colonel Morrison's murder. He took payments totaling $4.7 million. He provided intelligence that got soldiers killed. And he's been protecting General Carver for 8 years. She clicked to the financial records. Bank accounts, wire transfers, a paper trail so clear that even a first-year law student could follow it. Agent Richard Cole of the FBI was on Carver's payroll, $2 million over 6 years. He buried investigations. He intimidated witnesses. And 2 nights ago, he murdered FBI agent Rachel Vance when she discovered his betrayal. Sarah Vance stood in the crowd. My daughter died trying to expose this. She was FBI. She was a hero. And she was killed by someone who was supposed to be on her side. The live stream counter hit 200,000 viewers. Kit pulled out a flash drive. This contains everything. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. I'm giving copies to the FBI, to the Department of Defense Inspector General, to the press. By tomorrow morning, this will be on the front page of every newspaper in America. She looked directly at the camera. General Carver, I know you're watching. You threatened my daughter. You killed my husband. You killed my mentor. And now the whole world knows what you are. You're done. The door burst open. Not Blackwood, not deputies. General Theodore Carver himself, flanked by 2 Secret Service agents and 3 men in suits that screamed federal authority. The room went dead silent. Carver walked to the front with the confidence of a man who had commanded divisions and bent senators to his will. He was 65 years old, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who expected obedience. Major Reeves, his voice carried without a microphone, you've made serious allegations against a decorated officer. Allegations that, I might add, are based on fabricated evidence and the paranoid delusions of a traumatized veteran. Kit didn't flinch. The evidence speaks for itself, General. 200,000 people just heard your voice selling out American soldiers. Deep fakes, audio manipulation. Any first-year computer science student can create convincing fakes. You have PTSD, Major. You're unwell. You need help, not a platform. Marcus Morrison stepped forward. I'm Sergeant First Class Marcus Morrison, Delta Force. That evidence was collected by my brother, Colonel Jack Morrison, Green Beret. He spent 6 months documenting your treason before you had him killed. It's real, it's verified, and you know it. Carver's mask slipped for just a second. Annoyance flashed across his face. Your brother was mentally unstable. He was discharged for cause. Lie, Marcus said flatly. Jack was killed in action, or that's what the Marine Corps says. But I have video of Vincent Kane murdering him in a bunker 20 miles from here, while saying you sent him. Carver turned to the crowd. This is a coordinated smear campaign. I've served this country for 40 years. I've bled for it. I've lost friends for it. And I will not stand here and be accused of treason by people who clearly need psychiatric help. Then Ava's voice, small but clear, cut through the tension. You killed my daddy. The 8-year-old had slipped away from Dr. Cross. She walked down the center aisle holding a photograph. David Reeves in his SEAL uniform holding baby Ava. My mommy says you gave the bad guys information. That they hurt my daddy because of you. My daddy was a hero, and you're a liar. The silence was absolute. Carver looked at the child, and for a moment, something like shame crossed his face. But it hardened quickly. Young lady, your father died serving his country. Whatever your mother has told you is wrong. Ava held up the photo. My mommy doesn't lie, you do. She turned to the cameras. My name is Ava Reeves. I'm 8 years old. This man killed my daddy. Don't let him say he didn't. The live stream counter hit 500,000 viewers. Carver's composure cracked. This is child abuse. Using a traumatized child for political theater. Someone get her out of here. Kit was moving before he finished the sentence. She scooped Ava up, held her close. Don't you dare talk about my daughter. Don't you dare pretend you care about children when you've orphaned hundreds. Ava has more courage than you'll ever have. One of the FBI agents stepped forward. General Carver, I'm Special Agent Margaret Holt. I need you to come with me for questioning. On whose authority? The Deputy Attorney General, based on evidence submitted 72 hours ago by Major Reeves. Sir, you can come voluntarily or I can arrest you in front of these cameras. Your choice. Carver looked at the agent, at the cameras, at the crowd of veterans, some of whom were standing now, hands on weapons they shouldn't have brought but did anyway. This is persecution. This is a political hit job. When I'm cleared of these baseless charges, I will own every person in this room. You're welcome to try, General. Now please, come with me. The Secret Service agents didn't move. They weren't there to protect Carver from law enforcement. They were there to protect a vice presidential candidate. But Carver wasn't that yet. He was just a general, and generals could be arrested. Carver walked toward the door, head high, playing to the cameras. At the threshold, he turned back. Major Reeves, you've made a powerful enemy today. Sleep well. I sleep fine, General. Can you say the same? He left. The FBI agents followed. The Secret Service trailed behind, already on their phones, probably calling lawyers and politicians and damage control specialists. The room erupted. Frank Mason was trying to restore order. The journalists were shouting questions. Veterans were on their feet, some celebrating, some crying, some just standing in shock. Kit set Ava down and went back to the microphone. This isn't over. Carver has resources. He has powerful friends. He's going to fight this. But we have something he doesn't have. We have the truth, and we have each other. She looked at the veterans in the crowd. Some of you lost children, some lost spouses, some lost friends. I'm asking you to stand with me, to demand accountability, to make sure this never happens again. Dutch's voice boomed from the back. Semper Fi, Major, we stand. The room echoed it. Semper Fi. Then another voice. Hooah, Army strong. Ora, more Marines. The veterans were standing now, hands raised in salute, in solidarity, in shared grief and shared purpose. Kit saluted back. The live stream hit 1 million viewers. And somewhere in Washington, D.C., in the Pentagon, in the halls of power where men like Carver had operated with impunity for decades, people were watching and realizing that everything had changed. The meeting lasted another hour. Kit answered questions. Marcus provided additional evidence. Sarah Vance spoke about her daughter's sacrifice. Tommy Sullivan, sober and clear-eyed, testified about being paid to keep silent. By 8 p.m., when the last person finally left, Kit was exhausted. She sat in a folding chair, Ava asleep in her lap, and watched Marcus pack up the equipment. We did it, she said quietly. Not yet. Carver's not in jail. Blackwood is still sheriff. Kane is still alive in your bunker. This is just the opening move. It's enough. The world knows. They can't bury it now. Marcus sat beside her. Jack would be proud. He spent 6 months building this case. You took it across the finish line in 2 weeks. He did the hard part. I just pushed the button. You did more than that. You put your daughter at risk, your life, your sanity. For what? For soldiers you never met. For families you'll never know. That's not just finishing Jack's work. That's being the kind of Marine he always said you were. Kit felt tears building, but forced them back. I'm scared, Marcus. Scared that this won't matter. That Carver will walk. That the system is too broken to fix. Maybe it is, but at least we tried. At least those families know their soldiers didn't die because of bad luck. They died because someone betrayed them. That's worth something. Darkart Cross appeared with a coffee. You should go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be harder. Tomorrow, they arrest Blackwood. Tomorrow, Carver's lawyers go to work. Tomorrow, the Pentagon starts damage control. Tomorrow, politicians who took his money start running for cover. And tomorrow, people who want this buried are going to come after you harder than Kane did. Kit stood, careful not to wake Ava. Let them come. I'm done hiding. The drive home was quiet. Dutch and James followed in a second vehicle, providing security. Marcus rode shotgun, rifle across his lap. When they pulled up to the house, Kit saw immediately that something was wrong. The front door was open. Not broken, just open. Marcus was out of the truck before it stopped moving, rifle up, clearing angles. Dutch came up behind, moving with the fluid grace of a man who had done this 1,000 times. Kit stayed in the truck with Ava, gun drawn, watching the shadows. Marcus emerged 3 minutes later. Clear, but you need to see this. Kit carried Ava inside, put her on the couch with a blanket. The living room had been ransacked. Not destroyed, searched, professionally. Drawers opened carefully, cushions moved and replaced. Someone had gone through everything looking for something specific. The bunker entrance was undisturbed, the floorboards still in place. But on the kitchen table sat a folder. Kit opened it. Photographs. Ava at school, Ava at the playground, Ava in Dr. Cross's car. Dozens of photos, all taken in the last week. And a note. We know where she goes. We know who protects her. Back off or she disappears. No signature. Kit's hands shook. Not with fear, with rage so pure it felt like fire in her veins. Marcus read the note over her shoulder. They're desperate. Good. Good. They threatened my daughter, which means they're scared. Carver wouldn't authorize this if he thought he could win legitimately. He's panicking. Dutch was on his phone, though. I'm calling in favors. I know guys, serious guys, former operators who owe me. By tomorrow morning, Ava will have protection that makes Secret Service look like mall cops. Kit nodded. Do it. She looked at the photos again. Someone had been following her daughter for days, watching, waiting. She made a decision. Ava's not going back to school, not until this is over. She stays with me, always. Mr. Cross appeared in the doorway. I can help. My house has better security, cameras, alarms, and I have medical supplies if things go wrong. Thank you. They moved Ava that night, bundled the sleeping child into Dr. Cross's car, surrounded by armed veterans, and drove to a house on the other side of town. Kit stayed behind with Marcus and Dutch. They'll come again, she said. Let them. Dutch checked his rifle. I'm tired of defense. Time to make them bleed. Marcus was looking at his laptop. The story hit the New York Times 30 minutes ago. Front page digital. General faces treason, allegations. Evidence suggests widespread corruption. They're being careful with the language, but it's out there. Kit's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. A voice she didn't recognize. Young, male, panicked. Major Reeves, this is Lieutenant James Chen, Marine Corps. I'm calling from Quantico. I need to tell you something. General Carver tried to have me killed 3 years ago. I was investigating supply chain fraud. My convoy got hit. 6 Marines died. I survived, but I was told to drop the investigation. I have proof that Carver ordered the hit. Can I send it to you? Kit's heart raced. Yes, send everything. Thank you, ma'am. There's more of us. Officers who saw things, who were told to stay quiet. Your speech tonight, it gave us permission to talk. We're ready to testify. The call ended. Marcus was staring at his phone. I'm getting messages, lots of them. Veterans, active duty, people who witness things, people who have their own evidence. Dutch grinned. You didn't just crack the dam, Major, you blew it wide open. By midnight, Kit had received 43 calls, emails, messages, all from people who had pieces of the puzzle. People who had been silent because they thought no one would listen. Now they were talking. At 1 a.m., Kit's phone rang again. This time a number she recognized. FBI Special Agent Margaret Holt. Major Reeves, I'm calling to inform you that Sheriff Harrison Blackwood has been arrested. Federal charges. He's in custody in Helena. Vincent Kane is being transferred to federal holding, and we're executing search warrants on General Carver's properties. Kit closed her eyes. Is he in custody? Not yet. His lawyers are negotiating surrender terms. But between us, ma'am, he's done. We have enough evidence to put him away for life. Your testimony, the recordings, the financial records, it's airtight. What about the others? The network? We're working on it. Senator Richardson is already resigning. General Matthews is under investigation. More arrests coming. This is going to take time, but we're not stopping until we get them all. Thank you, Agent Holt. No, Major. Thank you. My brother died in Afghanistan, IED attack. I always wondered if someone betrayed his unit. Now I know. Now his death means something. The call ended. Kit sat in the darkness of her house, listening to Marcus and Dutch patrol outside, and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Victory. Not complete, not final, but real. General Theodore Carver's career was over. His vice presidential ambitions were dead. He would spend the rest of his life fighting criminal charges. Sheriff Blackwood was in federal custody. Vincent Kane was going to prison. Agent Cole was already cooperating, giving up names in exchange for a reduced sentence. And tomorrow, 100 families would wake up to news articles explaining that their soldiers hadn't died because of bad luck. They had been betrayed, but they had also been avenged. Kit walked to the bunker entrance. She descended the ladder one last time, stood in the chamber where Jack Morrison had been murdered. She placed his dog tags on the desk where she had found his ID card. We did it, Colonel. We finished your mission. Carver's going down. All of them are going down. You can rest now. She climbed back up, sealed the bunker, and locked the door. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Testimony, trials, media circuses, threats from Carver's allies. But tonight, Kit Reeves allowed herself to feel what Marines rarely admit to feeling. Pride. She had bought a house for $1 and found a war. She had fought that war with everything she had, and she had won. Not because she was the strongest, not because she was fearless, but because she refused to let the fallen be forgotten. Because she understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when powerful people want it buried. Because she was a Marine. And Marines don't leave anyone behind, not even the dead, especially not the dead. Somewhere in Washington, D.C., General Theodore Carver was making phone calls, trying to salvage a career that was already over. Somewhere in Helena, Sheriff Blackwood was sitting in a cell, realizing that corruption has consequences. Somewhere in a federal hospital, Vincent Kane was handcuffed to a bed, knowing he would never be free again. And somewhere in a small house in Blackwater Ridge, Montana, an 8-year-old girl slept peacefully, protected by warriors, safe because her mother had the courage to fight. Kit lay down on her sleeping bag and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight she could rest. The war was won. Now came the peace. 9 months passed like water through cupped hands. Kit stood in the federal courthouse in Helena, Montana, watching General Theodore Carver being led away in handcuffs. During testimony, Carver claimed, "I leaked to force political settlements. Those SEALs perpetuated endless wars. I'm a peacemaker." The jury's horror was visible. The verdict had come down an hour ago. Guilty on 38 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty on 17 counts of treason. Guilty on 42 counts of corruption and bribery. The jury had deliberated for 6 hours. The trial had lasted 3 months. The evidence had been overwhelming. Carver's face showed no emotion as the marshals guided him toward the holding cells. 65 years old, 4-star general, war hero, presidential candidate. Now a convicted traitor facing life without parole at the federal supermax in Colorado. He looked at Kit as he passed, just for a second, and in that second she saw something she hadn't expected. Relief, like a man who had been carrying a weight for so long that even prison felt lighter than the burden of maintaining the lie. Then he was gone, and Kit turned to find Ava waiting with Marcus Morrison. The child was 9 now, taller, quieter, the kind of quiet that comes from seeing too much too young. She still had nightmares about men with guns and blood on the kitchen floor. Dr. Cross said the trauma would fade with sheaths, but some scars run deeper than skin. "Is it over, Mom?" Kit knelt down, eye level with her daughter. "The trial is over, but there's more work to do." "How much more?" "As much as it takes." They walked out of the courthouse into bright May sunshine. The snow had finally melted, revealing the brown grass and muddy earth of Montana spring. Reporters waited on the steps, cameras ready, microphones extended like weapons. Kit had learned to handle them. 3 months of media attention had taught her how to speak in sound bites, how to control her facial expressions, how to turn every interview into another chance to honor the fallen. "Major Reeves, how do you feel about the verdict?" "Justice was served today, not just for my husband, but for 38 soldiers and their families. General Carver will spend the rest of his life in prison." "That's appropriate." "What's next for you?" Kit smiled. "Building something that matters, making sure this never happens again." She declined further questions and walked to the truck where Dutch waited, engine running. The drive back to Blackwater Ridge took 2 hours. Kit spent most of it on the phone, coordinating with contractors, confirming deliveries, reviewing architectural plans. Haven House was rising from the ground like a promise kept. Frank Mason had donated 5 acres of land behind his property. The Veterans Affairs Office had provided a grant for $200,000. Private donations had added another $400,000. Kit's settlement from the military, $5 million in compensation for David's wrongful death, had covered the rest. Total budget, $6.2 million. The construction had started in February, delayed by snow and frozen ground. But now in May, the buildings were taking shape. 2 residential structures, 12 beds each, designed to house veterans transitioning from homelessness or struggling with PTSD. Each room had a private bathroom, a desk, a window with a view of the mountains. Dignity built into every detail. A main house, expanded from Kit's original $1 purchase. Commercial kitchen capable of serving 30 people. Library with books donated by the county. Therapy rooms where Dr. Cross and 3 other counselors would provide free mental health services. A workshop building for vocational training. Woodworking, metalworking, auto repair. Skills that translated into jobs that paid enough to rebuild lives. And at the center of it all, a memorial wall. Black granite, 15 feet tall, carved with 112 names in gold leaf. Every soldier whose death could be traced to Carver's betrayal. Jack Morrison's name at the top. David Reeves beside him. Rachel Vance, the FBI agent who died exposing the truth. Tommy Sullivan, who had passed away in March from a heart attack, sober and clean for the first time in 20 years. The wall would have an eternal flame, not gas, but a solar-powered LED that would burn forever, requiring no fuel, no maintenance, no human intervention, a light that would never go out. Kit pulled up to the construction site at 4 p.m. Workers were finishing for the wedding, loading tools into trucks, discussing tomorrow's tasks. The foreman, a retired Marine named Rodriguez, walked over. "Major, we're ahead of schedule. Residential buildings will be habitable by July 1st. Main house by August. Workshop by September will make the deadline." Oh, any problems? Foundation on building 2 settled more than expected. Added 3 days and 8,000 to the budget, but we're still under overall cost. Kit nodded. "Do it right. I don't care about the budget. These buildings need to last." Rodriguez grinned. Jack Morrison said the same thing when he built the bunker. "Build it to last past the war." You knew Colonel Morrison? Served under him in Afghanistan. 2012. Best CO I ever had. When I heard what you were doing, what you'd found, I called Frank and volunteered. Wouldn't take payment, but Frank insisted. So I'm working cost only. A lot of us are. Kit looked at the construction site, at the frames going up, at the foundation that would support walls that would shelter broken men and women trying to find their way home. "Thank you, Rodriguez." "No, ma'am, thank you. My brother died in that Yemen operation. SEAL Team 6. You gave my family answers. This is the least I can do." He walked away, leaving Kit standing in the Montana afternoon, surrounded by the sound of hammers and saws and the smell of fresh-cut lumber. Marcus appeared from the main house, blueprints under his arm. The memorial wall contractor called. "Installation is scheduled for June 15th. They want you to approve the final design." Kit followed him to a table where the plans were laid out. The wall would curve slightly, embracing visitors rather than confronting them. The names would be organized by date of death, not alphabetically, telling a chronological story of betrayal. At the base, an inscription: "They served with honor. They died betrayed. They are remembered." "It's perfect," Kit said. Jack would have liked it. Marcus's voice carried the weight of 4 years grieving. He always said monuments should tell the truth, not hide it. They walked the property together, checking progress, discussing details. The garden area where residents could grow vegetables. The shooting range for therapeutic target practice, supervised and controlled. The dog kennels where service animals would be trained. Apollo was buried under an oak tree on the eastern edge of the property. The Belgian Malinois had died in February, peacefully in his sleep, 12 years old and surrounded by people who loved him. His grave marker read, "Apollo military working dog, saved lives, good boy." A week after Apollo's death, Dr. Nakamura had brought Kit a puppy, 8 weeks old Belgian Malinois from Apollo's bloodline. "Apollo's handler before you, she died last year," Dr. Nakamura had explained. Left instructions. "If Apollo passed, this pup goes to his family. That's you." Kit had named him Ranger. The puppy was 6 months old now, gangly and enthusiastic, already showing the intelligence and drive that made military working dogs irreplaceable. Ranger bounded across the construction site, chasing a butterfly, completely unaware of the legacy he carried. Ava ran after him, laughing for the first time in weeks. Kit watched her daughter play and felt something break open in her chest. Relief. Hope. The sense that maybe finally they were going to be okay. Chris pulled up in her Subaru, trunk loaded with donated furniture. She had become Haven House's volunteer coordinator, organizing the flood of support that had poured in after the trial. "Kit, we have a problem. Good problem, but still a problem." "What's that?" "We have 47 veterans on the waiting list. We only have 24 beds." Kit smiled. "Then we build more buildings." "With what money?" "I'll find it. Put out another fundraiser. Talk to the VA. This is what we do now, Emily. We build until everyone has a place." That night, after the workers left and the sun set behind the mountains, Kit sat on the porch of the main house with Marcus and Frank Mason. Frank was 77 now, his Vietnam-era hands gnarled with arthritis, but his mind still sharp as the bar knife he wore on his belt. "You did something special here, Kit, something that'll outlast all of us. We did it together. You donated the land. Marcus provided security. Dr. Cross organized volunteers. The community built it. But you had the vision. You took a dollar house and evidence of treason and turned it into hope. That's not strategy. That's heart." Marcus pulled out a flask of whiskey. He poured 3 shots into paper cups. "To Jack Morrison, to David Reeves, to Rachel Vance, to Tommy Sullivan, to everyone who died so we could build this." They drank in silence. Then Frank poured another round. To Kit Reeves, Marine, mother, the woman who wouldn't quit. Kit raised her cup. To the fallen, may we never forget. The whiskey burned going down, familiar and grounding. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to crickets, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Finally, Marcus spoke. What are you going to do when this place is finished? When it's running smooth? Kit had thought about this. Keep building. There's other towns, other veterans who need help. Maybe franchise the model, Haven House chapters across the country. You ever think about going back, active duty? No, my war's here now, helping people who came home broken, making sure the system doesn't abandon them the way it abandoned us. Frank stood, joints cracking. I'm heading home. Big day tomorrow. Dedication ceremony for the workshop building. He walked to his truck, then turned back. Kit, I'm 80 next year. I'm leaving everything to Haven House. My property, my savings. About 200,000 worth. I'm putting it in my will tomorrow. Frank, you don't have to do that. I don't have kids. Don't have family. This place is my legacy now. Let me do this. He drove away before Kit could argue. Marcus looked at her. He's right, you know. This place is bigger than any of us now. It's going to save lives. Hundreds of lives. I hope so. I know so. I've seen the waiting list. Combat vets with nowhere to go. People on the edge. This place is literally life or death for some of them. Kit thought about this bunker beneath the original house. About Jack Morrison's careful documentation. About the evidence that had brought down a general and exposed a network of corruption. Marcus, what do we do with the bunker? It's a crime scene, it's history, but it's also on Haven House property. Marcus considered. Turn it into a museum, preserve it exactly as Jack left it. Let people see where the investigation started. Make it part of the story. A museum to whistleblowers? A museum to truth, to people who risk everything to expose corruption. Jack, Rachel, Tommy in his own way. They deserve to be remembered. Kit liked the idea. The Morrison Memorial. We could use it for training. Show people what real courage looks like. They sat until midnight, planning, dreaming, building futures for people they would never meet. When Marcus finally left, Kit walked to Apollo's grave and sat in the grass beside the marker. Ranger came and curled up next to her, the puppy's warmth a comfort in the cool night. We did it, boy. Built something that matters. Your dad would be proud. Ranger's tail thumped against the ground. Kit looked up at the stars, the same stars that had covered the skies in Ramadi, in Syria, in all the places where she had served and bled and lost pieces of herself. She thought about David, who would never see his daughter grow up, about Jack, who died in a bunker trying to expose the truth, about Rachel, murdered for doing her job, about Tommy, who found redemption in his final months. She thought about the 112 names that would soon be carved in granite, and she thought about the veterans who would sleep in warm beds next month, who would learn trades, who would find community and purpose. This was the mission that mattered, not the one the military gave her, not the one politicians demanded, but the one she chose for herself. Building hope from ruins, creating light from darkness, turning a $1 house into a sanctuary. The dedication ceremony happened on July 4th, Independence Day. Fitting, Kit thought, since Haven House was about freedom too. Freedom from trauma, from homelessness, from the feeling that service meant nothing and sacrifice was forgotten. 600 people attended. Veterans from 5 states. Politicians who wanted to be associated with success. Media covering the feel-good story. Families who had lost soldiers to Carver's betrayal. The residential buildings stood completed. Fresh paint gleaming in the summer sun. The main house looked transformed, barely recognizable as the rotting structure Kit had bought 9 months ago. The memorial wall dominated the center courtyard, black granite reflecting clouds and sky and the faces of those who stood before it. Kit wore her dress blues again. This time they fit better. She had gained weight, muscle from construction work, health from regular meals, and sleep. Ava stood beside her in a white dress holding a folded flag. David's flag, the one the Navy had presented at his funeral 4 years ago. The ceremony began at 11 a.m. Frank Mason spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of 7 decades. We built this place for the warriors who came home but couldn't find peace, for the ones the system forgot, for the brothers and sisters who served with honor and got betrayed by people who should have protected them. Sarah Vance spoke about her daughter Rachel, about sacrifice and duty and the cost of truth. Dr. Emily Cross explained the mental health programs Haven House would offer. evidence-based therapy, medication management, peer support groups led by veterans who understood. Rodriguez, the construction foreman, described the vocational training. We're going to teach skills that lead to jobs, welding, carpentry, auto mechanics, 30-week programs with guaranteed job placement for graduates. Then Marcus Morrison took the podium. My brother Jack spent 6 months investigating corruption. He died for it, but his death wasn't meaningless. It led to this, to Haven House, to a place where veterans can heal. Jack always said, build it to last past the war. We did, brother. We built something that'll outlast all of us. Finally, Kit stepped forward. She looked out at this crowd, at veterans in wheelchairs and dress uniforms, at Gold Star families wearing photos of their dead, at Ava, 9 years old, holding her father's flag. I bought a house for $1. I thought I was getting shelter. I got a mission instead. I found evidence that soldiers were being betrayed by the people sworn to protect them. I found proof that greed and corruption had killed over 100 men and women in uniform. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. I also found community. Veterans who stood with me when it was dangerous. Families who demanded truth even when it hurt. People who refused to let the fallen be forgotten. Kit gestured to the memorial wall. Those names represent service and sacrifice. They also represent betrayal. We're not hiding that. We're not pretending they died heroically in fair fights. They died because someone sold them out. That's the truth. And Haven House exists because we told that truth. She pulled out a piece of paper. Jack Morrison's final letter, the one she had found in the bunker after the trial. Colonel Jack Morrison wrote this before he died. He knew he probably wouldn't survive, but he also knew someone would find his evidence. He wrote, build something that lasts. Build something that honors the fallen by helping the living. Build a place where broken warriors can become whole again. Kit folded the letter. We built it, Colonel. Haven House is your legacy. It's David's legacy. It's Rachel's and Tommy's and everyone who died trying to do the right thing. She looked at Ava. It's also a promise to the next generation that we won't let the system break people without fighting back. That service matters. That sacrifice is remembered. Ava stepped forward. She had practiced this part for a week. The child's voice was clear and strong. My name is Ava Reeves. My daddy was a Navy SEAL. He died because someone betrayed him. I'm 9 years old. When I grow up, I want to be like my mom. I want to help people. I want to make sure bad people don't hurt good people. She placed David's flag at the base of the memorial wall, below his name. The crowd erupted in applause. Kit pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face, and let herself feel everything she had been holding back for 9 months. Grief, pride, love, hope. The ribbon cutting happened at noon. Kit, Ava, Marcus, Frank, and Sarah each held a section of red ribbons stretched across the main entrance. On the count of 3, they cut. Haven House was officially open. The first 12 residents moved in that afternoon. All combat veterans. All struggling with PTSD, homelessness, or both. All looking for a place that understood. Kit greeted each one personally, showed them to their rooms, explained the rules and resources. One veteran, a Marine named Johnson who had served in Fallujah, stopped her. Ma'am, I've been homeless for 3 years. Couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep. VA kept giving me pills that didn't work. I saw your story on the news about exposing Carver, about building this place. It gave me hope. First time in years, I felt like maybe things could get better. Kit shook his hand. Welcome home, Marine. You're safe here. We're going to help you get back on your feet. Johnson's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was done. Thought I'd die on the streets. Thank you for caring. We're Marines. We don't leave people behind, ever. By evening, all 12 beds were filled. The residents gathered in the common room for dinner, wary and uncertain, but together. Frank Mason led them in grace. Lord, thank you for these warriors. Thank you for bringing them home. Thank you for giving them a place to heal. Bless this food and bless this house. Amen. A chorus of amens followed. Kit watched from the kitchen, Ranger at her feet, and felt something she hadn't felt since before David died. Peace, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. 1 year later, Haven House had served 47 veterans. 19 had successfully transitioned to independent housing and employment. 6 were still in residence working through programs. 2 had relapsed and been asked to leave, but offered readmission when they were ready. The workshop had graduated 12 people from its welding program. All 12 had jobs. The memorial wall had become a pilgrimage site. Families traveled from across the country to see their soldier's name carved in granite, to touch the stone, to know their loss was remembered. Frank Mason died peacefully that October, 80 years old, surrounded by veterans he considered family. His funeral was attended by 300 people. They buried him with full military honors under a Montana sky so blue it hurt to look at. His $200,000 funded Haven House's expansion, 2 more residential buildings, capacity increased to 48 beds. Vincent Kane testified against the remaining members of Carver's network from his prison cell. His cooperation got his sentence reduced from life to 30 years. He would be eligible for parole at 75. Sheriff Harrison Blackwood received 25 years. Lieutenant Richard Cole got 15 after his testimony brought down 3 senators and 2 generals. General Theodore Carver appealed his conviction. The appeal was denied. He would die in federal prison. Kit testified before Congress twice. Her testimony led to new whistleblower protections, new oversight of classified operations, new accountability for senior officers. She published a book, The Last Mission, One Marine's Fight for Truth. It became a New York Times bestseller. All proceeds went to Haven House. Dr. Emily Cross became Haven House's executive director, allowing Kit to focus on expansion. The Haven House model spread to Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado. Plans were in motion for facilities in Texas and North Carolina. Ava turned 10, then 11. The nightmares became less frequent. The therapy helped. The stability of Haven House, of knowing her mother was building something meaningful, gave her purpose beyond trauma. She started volunteering, reading to residents, helping in the garden, learning that service wasn't just about carrying weapons, but about carrying each other. Marcus Morrison took over operations at the original Haven House in Blackwater Ridge. He lived on property, maintained the buildings, ran security. At night, he sat in the bunker that had been converted into a museum, reading his brother's letters, making sure Jack's sacrifice was never forgotten. And Kit, she kept building. By the 3rd anniversary of buying the $1 house, Haven House Network had 8 locations and 160 beds. By the 5th anniversary, 20 locations, 400 beds. The waiting list remained long. There would always be veterans who needed help, always be warriors who came home broken. But now there was a place for them, a community, a mission that extended beyond combat. Kit stood in the original courtyard on a cold November morning, 5 years after she had arrived in Blackwater Ridge with $93 and a dream of survival. The memorial wall had weathered beautifully. The gold leaf names still gleamed. The eternal flame still burned. She touched David's name. Our daughter is incredible. She's going to Naval Academy next year. Following your footsteps. I'm terrified and proud, and I wish you could see her. She touched Jack's name. We're at 20 locations now, Colonel. Helped over 800 veterans. Built exactly what you asked for, something that lasts. She touched Rachel's name. Your mom runs the Haven House in Denver. She's saving lives because you saved the truth. She touched Tommy's name. You died sober, brother. Died protecting a child. That's the definition of redemption. Ranger, now 5 years old and fully trained as a therapy dog, pressed against her leg. Ava appeared, 17 now, tall and strong, wearing a Naval Academy acceptance letter like a badge of honor. Mom, they're waiting for you. The new residents want to meet you. Kit followed her daughter to the common room where 6 new veterans sat, nervous and hopeful. She introduced herself the same way she always did. My name is Kit Reeves. I'm a Marine, I'm a mom, I'm a widow, and I'm someone who bought a house for $1 and found a mission. Welcome to Haven House. Welcome home. One of the veterans, a young woman who looked barely 20, raised her hand. Ma'am, I heard you took down a general, exposed corruption, saved lives. Why did you do it? Why risk everything? Kit thought about the question, about the real answer. Because I'm a Marine, and Marines don't leave anyone behind. Not the living, not the dead. We fight for each other, always. She looked at the memorial wall visible through the window, at the names that would outlast her. General Carver thought he could bury the truth, thought money and power made him untouchable. He was wrong. The truth always surfaces. Justice always comes. It just takes people willing to fight for it. The young veteran nodded. Thank you, ma'am, for fighting. Thank you for serving. Now let's get you settled. You've got a long road ahead, but you're not walking it alone. That night, after the new residents were oriented and the staff had gone home, Kit walked the property alone. She visited Apollo's grave, now surrounded by flowers that volunteers maintained. She checked the bunker museum where Jack's desk remained exactly as she had found it, preserved as testament to courage. She stood at the memorial wall and read every name aloud. 112 soldiers, 112 families, 112 lives that mattered. Then she went home to the small cabin she had built on the property. Not the original $1 house, which had been demolished to make room for the main building, but a new home, simple, warm, filled with photos of David and Ava and the veterans whose lives had been changed. She poured a glass of whiskey and sat on the porch. Ranger settled at her feet. The Montana sky spread above, infinite and clear. Kit raised her glass to the stars. To the fallen, to the fighters, to everyone who refused to quit. She drank, feeling the burn, feeling alive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More veterans who needed help. More bureaucracy to fight. More evidence that the system was still broken. But tomorrow would also bring hope. Because Haven House existed. Because the truth had won. Because one Marine with $93 in a $1 house had proved that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things. Kit Reeves had bought a house for $1. She had found a bunker full of secrets. She had exposed corruption at the highest levels. She had brought down a general and changed a system. But more importantly, she had built a home for the homeless, hope for the hopeless, a mission for those who thought their service was over. She had proved that the strongest foundations weren't built with steel and concrete, but with truth and courage and refusal to let sacrifice mean nothing. The house that cost $1 had become priceless, not because of money, but because of the lives it saved, and the promise it kept, that we leave no one behind, not in war, not at home, never.